Chapter 76. When facing the enemy, Long Houchen was facing the most powerful enemy. When commanding, he was able to prepare for a rainy day and had great foresight, leading the whole team out of a deadly situation without a single casualty. Whether it was strength, decisiveness, wisdom, or leadership, he showed Lu Shi that he was a true leader. Under Long Houchen's command, the combat power of the rank 21 monster hunters was maximized, and at the same time, they had effectively preserved their strength. And how much contribution did their 4th soldier grade demon hunt squad have? Just Long Houchen alone was enough to match the entire team's contribution. At the same time, Lu Shi was deeply aware of the difficulty of commanding a team as a cleric. Although a cleric had a certain level of combat power, it was more important for them to wholeheartedly heal the team. In terms of on-the-spot command, they were far inferior to the judgment of the knight, who was charging in the front line. The reason why the knight was known as the mainstay of the monster hunters was because his ability could radiate to the entire field. Looking at the sincerity in Lu Shi's eyes, Long Houchen smiled and said, "Brother Lu, you don't have to belittle yourself. Nothing that we have agreed on will change. We will definitely do what we have promised. We have already taken 70% of the profits, so naturally we have to do more." Leader Long. Lu Shi wanted to say something else, but Long Houchen raised his hand to stop him. Long Houchen's expression became serious. "Now is not the time to discuss this issue. I just want to say 2 things. First, I want to emphasize that during the battle, everyone must follow orders strictly. Because even if only one of you makes a mistake, it is very likely that the whole team will be wiped out. That's right, demons are our mortal enemies. Every one of us wants to kill as many demons as possible. However, for the sake of long-term considerations, impulsiveness will only turn us into demons. If we want to kill more demons and avenge our comrades, then the first thing we need to do is to protect ourselves as much as possible. If you have any opinions about my command, you can raise them during non-combat time, and we will discuss them together. If my ability is not enough to command the whole team, I will step down and give way. However, once we enter the battlefield, I hope that the previous situation will not occur again. If anyone makes a mistake in battle and affects the survival of the entire team, don't blame me for mercilessly kicking them out of the team." "Yes." The 12 people responded at the same time, including Dian Yen, who was filled with sorrow. Long Houchen said, "The second matter is what we're going to do next. Just now, when I was hurrying along, I had been adjusting the direction by checking the map. We have no way out. Behind us is the Narik province of the demons. Since the demons there dared to rob all the goods of Yuye's caravan, they naturally had to silence them. So, we can only keep moving forward. Now we are about 400 miles into the demons' territory. The terrain of Narik province is long and narrow, and the overall area is not large. In about 6 hours we will be able to rush out of this province. However, as long as we are in the territory of the demons, there is no such thing as safety. Therefore, please remain vigilant at all times. Now, let's talk about everyone's thoughts on the follow-up. After we pass through the Narik province, do we continue straight to the mission goal, or do we take a detour back to the Alliance? After the battle just now, everyone deeply felt the danger of being in the territory of the demons. Of course, the probability of being surrounded by the demon army was not high, but this was the territory of the demons. Without the cover of the caravan, the rest of their journey would not be smooth. Through the previous battle, there was no doubt that Long Houchen had established enough prestige in the team. However, he did not arbitrarily decide the future direction of the team. Instead, he let everyone express their opinions. This alone made Lu Shi admire him even more. He asked himself if he could do the same in the same situation. Let's continue moving forward. After all, being surrounded by the demon army is a small probability event. As long as we don't encounter demons that are above grade 7, self-preservation is not a problem. We only have a dozen people, and the target is not too big. Although the territory of the demons is dangerous, risks and opportunities also coexist. The growth of monster hunters has always been carried out in the process of hunting demons. Lu Shi said his thoughts. His words were also agreed by most of the people. Although the battle with the demon army in the Narak province was thrilling, these demon hunters were the best of the younger generation in the Temple League. Each of them had been strictly examined by the Alliance. Their loyalty to the Alliance and their belief in fighting against the demons were extremely firm. Moreover, under the command of Long Houchen, they still maintained their full combat effectiveness. How could they back down? Seeing that everyone's opinion was basically unanimous, Long Houchen nodded and said, "Well, in that case, we will immediately solve the problem in front of us." As he spoke, he glanced at the carriage. After 4 hours of rest, Yu Yi had already woken up. Although her face was still pale, there was some vigor in her eyes. She had taken some medicinal pills and was sitting on the shaft of the carriage with Lung Xiao, talking about something. The 2 hours of rest passed quickly. The two monster hunters, demon hunters, and the magicians got on the carriage together, but Lung Xiao and Yu Yi were still sitting on the shaft outside the carriage. Lin Xian did not follow Long Houchen and also got on the carriage. Only Long Houchen took Kai to Yu Yi and Lung Xiao. Seeing the two of them coming over, Yu Yi smiled indifferently and said, "I think you want to talk to me, right? But before that, can I first know the name of my savior? Let me introduce myself first. I am Yu Yi, the current leader of Yu Ye's Chamber of Commerce. She is Lung Xiao, my friend." Long Houchen's eyes revealed a trace of surprise, but he quickly returned to normal. "Hello, President Yu Yi, I am Long Houchen." Long Houchen. Yu Yi seemed to be chewing on the name. Looking at Long Houchen's handsome face, she smiled and said, "I really want to know your age, can I?" Long Houchen shook his head and said, "I'm afraid I can't delay my apology." Yu Yi sighed softly and said, "If my Chamber of Commerce really had an outstanding young powerhouse like you, I wouldn't have to be so tired. Unfortunately, you don't belong to my caravan. In my memory, there is no such name as Long Houchen, nor is there a knight with a saint's spiritual stove. You saved us, so what do you want in return?" Long Houchen frowned and sighed, saying, "This choice is actually very difficult, President Yu Yi." At this moment, his eyes were brimming with an indescribable meaning. There was also a trace of faintly discernible killing intent. "What do you want?" Lung Xiao's body moved horizontally, blocking in front of Yu Yi. After 2 hours of rest, her body had recovered a lot. Kai slowly took a step forward, a sharp killing intent instantly locked onto Ling Xiao. At this moment, an unexpected scene appeared for Long Houchen. Bang! A white palm cut from behind at the intersection of Ling Xiao's neck and shoulder. Ling Xiao's body went limp, her eyes filled with disbelief as she fell into Yu Ye's embrace. Yu Yi gently put Lung Xiao down beside her, letting her lean against the carriage. Only then did she raise her head to look at Long Houchen and Kai, saying indifferently, "I think, now we can have a good talk." Long Houchen held Kai's hand, hinting her not to be impulsive. He indifferently smiled and said, "President Yu Yi must have guessed what I want to do." Yu Yi sighed softly and said, "Isn't it the same as those bastards in Narak province, silencing them? Young monster hunters, Captain." Long Houchen's pupils contracted slightly. "President Yu Yi is very smart." Yu Yi smiled bitterly and said, "If I was really smart, I wouldn't have led the caravan out this time to take such a risk. Although I haven't been in charge of the Chamber of Commerce for long, I have traveled this trade route more than a dozen times. For young powerhouses like you, besides the monster hunters of the Temple League, I can't think of any other possibility. If my guess is correct, all you need is a single command from you, and all my subordinates in the carriage will perish. It's a pity that although I guessed your identity, I didn't expect you to act so quickly. With the overall strength of the two of you monster hunters, I don't think we are a threat, right?" Long Houchen smiled and said, A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush. If I'm not wrong, President Yu Yi should have reinforcements, and I'm afraid the reinforcements are quite strong. Yu Yi was stunned, but she didn't try to hide it. She just asked curiously, "How did you guess it?" Long Houchen said, "Although President Yu Ye's strength isn't too strong, to be able to take out the rank 9 forbidden spell scroll of the Moon Devils to summon the Moon Demon, I'm afraid your status among the Moon Devils is not low. The Moon Demon is ranked 2nd among the 72 demon god pillars. The demons of Narik province dared to offend you, so I don't believe that you didn't prepare at all. With your status, the powerhouses of the Moon Devil clan should arrive soon, am I right? The Moon Devils are not something that we, small monster hunters, can compete with. Therefore, in order to hide the secret of our identity, we had to act against you. Even if I guessed wrong, I can't let my companions take the risk." Yu Yi looked at Long Houchen quietly. She suddenly smiled. It had to be said that her appearance was extremely beautiful, on the same level as Kai. Her purple eyes were even more charming and luxurious. "You are the best knight I have ever seen. If I were the leader of the demons, knowing that there is such a young and excellent knight like you, I will definitely use all means to kill you. Otherwise, in the future, you are likely to become a huge threat to the demons." Long Houchen looked at her in surprise. "Are you not a demon? The color of your eyes has already betrayed you, Miss Moon Devils." Yu Yi raised her hands, and the nails of her right hand instantly scratched her left wrist. Suddenly, dark red blood gushed out and slowly dripped down her white wrist. Seeing the blood flowing out of her wrist, both Long Houchen and Kai were shocked. Advanced demons had a very human-like appearance, only some characteristics were slightly different from humans. The only real difference between humans and demons was their blood. Among the demons, no matter which race, the color of their blood was not red. There were purple, blue, green, black, and so on, but it was definitely not red. Yu Yi used her actions to defend her identity. She, who had bright red blood, was not a real demon. Her right hand wiped over the wound, and the blood stopped flowing. Yu Yi then said to Long Houchen, "To be precise, I am a hybrid of human and demons. My mother is a human woman. In addition to inheriting part of my father's inheritance, I also inherited my mother's human bloodline. Therefore, I'm more of a human. I'm not afraid to tell you that my father is the current Moon Demon. It's just because of my human bloodline that I don't have the qualifications to inherit the Moon Demon, so I became the president of Yu Ye's Chamber of Commerce." At this point, she suddenly chuckled. However, this seemingly frivolous chuckle gave off a sorrowful feeling. "I'm a qualified wandering merchant. In my heart, there is no distinction between demons and humans. Therefore, I won't help humans deal with demons, nor will I help demons deal with humans. But you guys are different. If it weren't for your timely appearance, I would be a corpse now. No matter what your purpose is, I'm the ultimate beneficiary, and the result won't change. So, what I want to say is, I'm more useful to you guys alive than dead." Speaking of this, Yu Yi paused slightly and looked at Long Houchen with a deep gaze. "Leader Long, you're a smart person. As the daughter of the Moon Demon and the princess of the Moon Devils, although I don't have the right to inherit the demon god, I still have a high status among the demons. If you kill me, you won't get any merit points. Keeping me alive will be helpful for your future missions among the demons. You guys are my saviors, and I will always remember this. Of course, it's just empty words. I'm afraid it's hard for you to trust me. You guys are monster hunters, so you must have some restrictive methods. Just use them on me. Whether it's to survive or to repay your kindness, I have no other choice. However, I also want to ask you not to hurt Ling Xiao. She's my friend. She doesn't know anything about you guys. She just came to the caravan to play with me. The reason why I knocked her out was that I wanted her to live without knowing anything." Looking at Yu Yi, Long Houchen suddenly felt a sense of fear in his heart. Whether her words were sincere or not, this woman was too smart. It could be said that she had a good grasp of the psychology of Long Houchen and the others. Every sentence she said was just right. Narrowing his eyes, Long Houchen said in a deep voice, "If I don't kill you, what kind of help can you bring to us?" Yu Yi smiled slightly. She knew that Long Houchen had been persuaded by her. No one is better at bringing humans or demons to the other party's territory than the wandering merchants. I know that you guys are not willing to stay and wait for the Moon Devil's reinforcements. I have some special things that can slightly change your appearance, turning you into noble demons. Together with my carriage and some necessary tokens, you only need to travel all the way through the city, and you can easily enter the depths of the demons and reach your destination. Long Houchen hesitated. In this situation, there was no doubt that killing Yu Yi and her people was the best way to cover up the situation of the two monster hunters sneaking into the territory of the demons. However, he had to be concerned about Yu Ye's ability. Who knew what kind of magic scrolls or weapons this woman carried? Even he and Kai Er were not sure that they could kill the opponent and retreat at the same time. Moreover, Yu Yi was not a pure demon. If he could get her sincere help, it would be very beneficial for the future development of the monster hunters. Such benefits could not be tolerated by Long Houchen, so he did not hesitate. Long Houchen, I want to talk to her alone. Kai Er, who had been standing next to Long Houchen, suddenly said. Although Long Houchen was a little surprised, he still nodded. Okay. Kai Er waved to Yu Yi. Come with me. Looking at Kai Er's clear but emotionless eyes, Yu Ye's original confidence suddenly showed some cracks. She suddenly felt that the veiled girl standing next to Long Houchen was more dangerous. Although Long Houchen was strong and full of wisdom, he could still try to persuade her. However, Kai Er standing there was like an emotionless cold blade that could pierce her heart at any time. Yu Yi glanced at Long Houchen. Seeing that he did not respond, she felt a little depressed, but she still followed Kai Er to the side. Kai Er did not lead her far. After about 20 steps, she stopped and turned to face Yu Yi. Seeing that you have human blood, we will give you this chance. However, don't try to play any tricks. It will not work and will only bring you to the end of your life. As she spoke, Kai Er's left hand suddenly moved and directly hit Yu Ye's chest. Yu Yi was shocked and subconsciously wanted to dodge, but the Kai Er in front of her suddenly became illusory. Then, Yu Yi only felt that everything around her body seemed to have disappeared, and only endless murderous intent remained. What kind of ability is this? Yu Yi was greatly alarmed. That bone-chilling killing intent caused her to feel a chill run through her entire body, and her surroundings turned gray. In the next moment, an ice-cold little hand had already pressed against her chest. As if a sharp needle had pierced her heart, Yu Yi cried out in pain. Her body swayed and she fell to the ground. The murderous intent came and went quickly. When the gray faded, Kai Er reappeared in front of her, as if nothing had happened. Yu Yi looked at the black-clothed girl in front of her in a daze. Right now, she was only thinking if she was in peak condition, would she be able to dodge that palm? The answer was no. Perhaps there was a chance if she was far away, but at this distance, even if she was stronger, she would not be able to dodge her attack. What a powerful assassin! No wonder she could even injure the Golden Devil. Her strength was probably not below Long Houchen's. Looking within herself and sensing the changes in her body, Yu Yi immediately turned pale with fright in the next moment. This was because she was shocked to discover that there really was a needle at the location of her heart. It was a small gray but crystalline needle. This needle was stuck close to her heart. It was clearly condensed from spiritual power, but it did not move at all. Apart from the occasional cold feeling, it did not seem to do any damage to her body. Obviously, this was only on the surface. How could it be harmless to have such a thing in her heart? Yu Ye's expression was a bit ugly. It had to be said that she was very smart. From Long Houchen's eyes, she could see the benevolence of this young knight. When she suggested that Long Houchen and the others put a restriction on her body, she still had a bit of hope. But now, that hope clearly did not exist. Kair said indifferently, "I'll give you a warning. Don't try to remove the restriction I left on your body. In this world, I'm the only one who can remove it. Even the Demon Emperor cannot make it disappear, unless you are already a corpse by then." Yu Yi could hear that this was not a threat. Kai Er's voice was very calm, completely describing a fact. Moreover, she could be considered to have seen a lot of things. She had never seen a restriction like this before. Kai Er turned around and returned to Long Houchen's side. Yu Yi also stood up from the ground and pressed her right hand on her left chest. While panting, she looked at Kai Er with a bit of fear in her eyes. Kai Er nodded to Long Houchen and whispered something to him. Long Houchen nodded slightly, then looked at Yu Yi and said, "We agree to your conditions. Now you can take out whatever help you can to help us. I will leave you and Ling Xiao alive." Yu Ye's face was a bit pale. "Then when can this restriction of mine be removed?" Kai Er said indifferently, "As long as you can see me once a year, and I can live peacefully, this restriction will never flare up. To completely remove this restriction, there is only one possibility, that is, one day the demons will be destroyed." Yu Ye's eyes finally showed anger. Kai Er glanced at her coldly. "Are you qualified to talk to us about conditions?" Yu Yi took a deep breath and calmed the anger in her heart. Of course, she did not want to die. In this world, everyone cherished their own life. "I understand." As she spoke, the ruby ring on Yu Ye's hand shone brightly. One by one, things were released from it, and she explained to Long Houchen and Kai their functions. A quarter of an hour later, Long Houchen put away the things that Yu Yi provided. "Thank you for your help. If you are really loyal to humans, I believe it will be a good thing for the Alliance. Don't worry about the restriction on your body. If one day you show us your loyalty to humans, we will remove it for you. It is not safe here, we have to go." Yu Yi nodded silently, looked at Long Houchen, and then looked at Kai. The light in her eyes fluctuated slightly, but there was a bit of sadness in her eyes, giving people a feeling of pitifulness. "Before we go, can you do me one more thing?" Yu Yi pleaded in a low voice. Looking at her appearance, Long Houchen's heart softened. After all, he was only a youth, and Kai had placed a restriction on Yu Yi, so he felt somewhat apologetic in his heart. In this period of time, the things that Yu Yi had taken out were sufficient proof of her sincerity, and she had no intention of playing tricks. "Speak." Long Houchen's voice was clearly much gentler. Yu Yi said, "Please knock out my subordinates. I have a memory-erasing spell, so they must be wiped. That way you will be the safest." "Okay." Long Houchen agreed without hesitation, and flicked his finger in the direction of the carriage. Immediately, a series of banging sounds came from inside the carriage. The rest of Yu Ye's subordinates were all magicians. In the face of close combat like wolves and tigers, how could they resist? Two members of the monster hunters filed out and came to Long Houchen's side. Long Houchen said to Yu Yi apologetically, "We still have a long way to go, so we need to borrow some of your iron bristle horses. 10 of them will be enough, and the rest will be left for you. You should also leave this place as soon as possible. This place is still within the scope of the Narik province, so it is not too safe." "Got it." Yu Yi changed from her previous intelligent appearance and obediently agreed, as if she was a maid who had met her master. Kai frowned slightly. She didn't know why, but she found that she disliked the woman in front of her more and more. A faint light flashed, and Long Houchen's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. "Get on the horses, let's go." Everyone untied the iron bristle horses one by one. Except for Long Houchen, Lin Xin, and Kai who didn't need one, the others each picked a horse and mounted it. Under the leadership of Long Houchen, they galloped into the distance. Watching them leave, the light in Yu Ye's eyes gradually became cold. Her right hand subconsciously touched her left chest, feeling the softness there, and also the trace of coldness inside. "No matter how terrifying you are, you still have a weakness. As long as Long Houchen asks, you will definitely remove my restriction. Long Houchen, I will definitely succeed. Speaking of this, Yu Ye's face showed a trace of pride and nobility. She didn't lie to Long Houchen and the others. She was indeed the princess of the Moon Devils, and she didn't mind helping Long Houchen and the other two monster hunters. There was only one reason. It was because of Long Houchen. In addition to saving her life, there were other reasons. Although Yu Yi had human blood and couldn't inherit the position of the Moon Demon's demon god, she was known as the Moon Phase among the Moon Devils. She was extremely talented and had wisdom far beyond that of ordinary people. Even the Moon Demon relied on her very much. It could be said that she was the #1 genius of the Moon Devils. Because of this, Yu Yi had always been proud of himself since he was young. Because of her excellence, many of the top-ranked demon gods proposed to the Moon Demon, hoping to marry her. However, they were all rejected by Yu Yi without hesitation. There was only one reason for her rejection. Under the circumstances of the same age, whoever could defeat her in strength and wisdom would be qualified to marry her. There was no doubt that until now, among the demons, no one could do this except the heir of the Demon Emperor. However, the Demon Emperor wouldn't marry the Moon Demon. This was the rule. In order to ensure the purity of his bloodline, the heir of the Demon Emperor can only marry a woman of his own race, or a female dragon. Yu Yi was 22 years old this year. Today, she finally met a man who could make her submit to him. Although the other party was a human, she still had an unprecedented feeling. It didn't mean that she liked Long Houchen, but that she had a desire to compete with him. At the same time, in her heart, she at least recognized that this man was worthy of her. Yu Ye's words came from the bottom of her heart. She had never seen herself as a demon, nor did she see herself as a human. She didn't have too deep feelings for either, nor did she reject them too much. What she followed was the concept of the strong being respected. With a flash of light, a scroll appeared in Yu Ye's hand. She walked slowly to the door of the carriage and threw the scroll open. A strong flame suddenly shone. She threw the scroll into the carriage and closed the door. A few seconds later, there was a loud bang. The heavy carriage bounced off the ground in the explosion. However, the carriage was really tough. It didn't explode under such circumstances. Leng Xiao, who was on the shaft of the carriage, was thrown into the air. The Iron Mane horse also panicked and wanted to run away. However, the carriage was too heavy. Before activating the levitation spell, they couldn't run even if they wanted to. Only the dead can keep secrets the best. Yu Ye's expression was very calm, as if she had done something very simple. Leng Xiao woke up from the fall. What happened? What happened? Climbing up from the ground, Leng Xiao saw Yu Yi at first glance. However, the next moment, her gaze became blank. There seemed to be endless confusion in Yu Ye's purple eyes. She just stared at her silently. Leng Xiao's gaze was drawn to her and fell deeply. That's right, Yu Yi had the ability to erase some memories. Unfortunately, this ability consumed a lot of her mental energy, so she couldn't use it on many people. Those subordinates could kill to silence them, but Leng Xiao obviously couldn't. As for what happened after they left the carriage, Long Houchen and the rest had no idea. They ran all the way. When dawn broke, they had already run for another 200 miles. They chose a secluded place to rest. Long Houchen didn't kill Yu Yi and her subordinates. If this decision was made in the past, he would definitely be questioned by his companions. However, this time, everyone was surprisingly calm. Especially the 6 soldier level 4 monster hunters. They didn't even ask a single question. This wasn't fear, but trust. They trusted Long Houchen almost blindly. Ever since he left the Temple League, Long Houchen had never made a wrong decision. He used his own ability to prove to everyone that he was an excellent commander. This time, they brought enough water and food to last them for 3 months. Eating and drinking wasn't a problem. After replenishing their strength, Long Houchen didn't rush to bring them away. Instead, he spread out the map and took out some of the things that Yu Yi gave them. Everyone, change your clothes. And this. It was a thin crystal piece, and each piece was rippling with faint magic waves. Long Houchen demonstrated how to use it. Not long after, the 13 of them all changed their appearance. The overall change wasn't big, mainly in terms of clothes. Purple robes became the main theme. Everyone's clothes were similar. The robes that were too long could be folded. After some slight modifications by the girls, they basically fit well. At the same time, the color of their eyes changed. Everyone's pupils turned purple. Behind their purple robes, there was a crescent moon. The delicate crystal piece was the magic eye that Ling Xiao and Yu Yi had worn before. However, Yu Yi had given Long Houchen and the others purple. This outfit, coupled with the change in the color of their eyes, made Long Houchen and the others completely look like moon devils. Of course, it wasn't just their appearance. Each of them also had an identity token of the moon devils. Although this token wasn't a magic device, it had the unique bloodline aura of the moon devils. It wasn't easy to make. With it, Long Houchen and the others would naturally release the unique coldness and evil charm of the moon devils. They had become high-level demons. Leader, what do we do next? Do we really swagger into the demon's city, like Yu Yi said? Sima Xian asked. Long Houchen shook his head and said, No, we aren't demons after all. Although the things we have to hide our identity are enough. We can't be like the demons in terms of habits and details. Once we enter the demon's city, so many high-level demons will definitely pay attention to us, and there is a possibility of us being exposed. Moreover, since we are high-level demons, we can't ride low-level beasts like the iron bristle horses. If we enter the city, we will have to abandon these beasts. Therefore, I just checked the route and we have enough supplies. Let's follow our original plan to avoid the city as much as possible and go to the Howling Fear Cave as quickly as possible to complete the mission. There was no doubt that Long Houchen's idea was very cautious. He would never completely trust Yu Yi. Everyone nodded in agreement. Long Houchen said to his companions on the general level number 21 Monster Hunters side, Let's gather the merit points and distribute them. Although he was fair, he was not pedantic. He didn't propose to share the merit points with the general level number 4 Monster Hunters. After all, there was a difference in strength between the two Monster Hunters, and their contribution to the whole team was different. Long Houchen also had to consider the opinions of his companions. Naturally, his companions didn't have any objections to his proposal. That's right, after entering the demon's territory, they encountered a lot of trouble, but at the same time, the rewards this time were quite generous. The general level number 4 Monster Hunters obtained quite a lot of merit points from killing the demons. Each mad demon was worth 4 merit points, and the bird demon was worth as much as 6 merit points. The other demons were also much more powerful than the dual-bladed demon. Long Houchen's side earned even more. The Crimson Blood Demon died in the hands of Long Houchen, and the Golden Bird Demon died in the hands of Kair. These two rank 7 demons definitely had more than 1,000 merit points. It was already enough for Long Houchen's team to repay their debt. Moreover, Long Houchen had led the team to kill so many great bird demons before. The corpses of the strong demons were all collected by Lin Xian. Just these corpses and the magic crystals inside were worth quite a lot. As a result, the happiest person in the whole team was Lin Xian. With so many good materials, he would be able to refine many pills when he returned. Not only could Lin Xian's pills be sold for gold coins outside, there were also many people who were willing to buy them in the Monster Hunters Trading Center. Chapter 77. It could be said that the profit from the previous battle had already exceeded the total profit of 3 months in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Of course, this was under the premise that the light elemental sprites were not counted. The rest time was not long. Under Long Houchen's leadership, they once again set out. They had to leave the Narik province first. In the end, misfortune did not always accompany them. Following the guidance of the map, they tried their best to find the wilderness to move forward. When the sky brightened and the sun shone on the earth, they finally left the Narik province. And at this time, Long Houchen finally could not hold on any longer. The huge battle had consumed too much of Long Houchen's body. It could be said that he was both mentally and physically exhausted. The injuries on his body were secondary. The key was that he had used the sacrifice skill, which had overdrawn his spiritual power. Following this, they had to continue on their journey, not to mention that he was shouldering the responsibility of leading 2 teams. Lu Shi's healing could only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. When they finally reached a relatively safe place, Long Houchen fell into Kai Er's arms. During the time that Long Houchen was unconscious, the 2 monster hunters had a careful discussion and decided to rest and recuperate on the spot. Their location was a desolate hill. Ever since the Holy Demon Continent's vast land was occupied by the demons, there were more and more barren lands. Without enough manpower to cultivate, weeds overgrew the originally fertile land. Everyone found a low-lying area in the hilly area and temporarily set up camp. In order to not expose their identity as humans, they did not dare to set up camp. They could only find a relatively high place in the low-lying area and have a few close combat members dig a cave that could accommodate everyone to rest and recuperate. The reason why the 2 monster hunters decided to stay and recuperate on the spot was very simple. They had reached a consensus that the team needed Long Houchen's command. Without him, the entire team would not be able to display their full strength. Rashly advancing would only produce the opposite of the desired result. It was better to rest and recuperate, allowing everyone to recover their physical condition after a bitter battle. At the same time, they could also cultivate and convert the potential that they had stimulated into strength. This recuperation lasted for 3 whole days. The hilly area they had chosen was indeed desolate. The weeds and shrubs on the ground were the best food for the iron-maned horses. In truth, Long Houchen only needed 1 day to recover from the side effects of sacrifice and the injuries on his body. But he still decided to stay for 2 more days. Training after a great battle was the best opportunity for any profession to improve. Not only did they have to complete the monster hunter's mission, but they also had to constantly improve their strength. There was no need to be overly hasty. At the same time, Long Houchen discovered that after his internal spiritual energy exceeded 3,000, his training speed had increased significantly. It wasn't only because of the light elemental fairy Yiting, but also because his own perception and attraction towards the light elements in the outside world were much stronger than before. Especially after this war. After 3 days, Long Houchen was surprised to find that his internal spiritual force had increased by more than 100 points. One had to know that what he was currently enhancing was purely liquid spiritual power. Such an enhancement speed could only be described as terrifying. However, on the 4th day, the enhancement speed had obviously slowed down. It was obvious that the potential stimulated by the war had faded. But after careful calculations, Long Houchen found that if he were to fully focus on training, his internal spiritual force could still increase by more than 20 points per day. 20 points was already a rather terrifying number. Based on this cultivation speed, he would only need 2 months to break through to the rank 6 Radiance Knight. Of course, Long Houchen didn't tell them about his changes. He didn't want to agitate his companions. However, he had already secretly decided that after completing this mission, he would return to the Holy City and go into seclusion for a period of time to strive to break through to the Radiance Knight. If his strength could increase to rank 6, he would be able to take on more difficult missions in the future. The iron-maned horses set off again, heading straight for the depths of the demons. Although the straight-line distance from the Temple League border to their destination was only over 2,000 miles, how could they possibly travel in a straight line? After running for another 7 days, they finally reached the vicinity of the central province of the demons and were getting closer to their destination. However, they had to reduce their speed because the closer they were to the central province, the more demons they encountered. They could even see humans from time to time. Without exception, almost all humans were engaged in farming. The Moon Devil's attire was extremely useful. No matter what race the demons were, they would quickly avoid them when they saw them from afar. Unfortunately, after encountering the strange gazes for the first time, they had no choice but to give up on the suspicious iron-maned horses and walk instead. Long Houchen issued a strict order that no one was to attack the demons without his permission. Killing the demons could increase merit points, but it also meant an increased risk of exposure. Spreading out the map and carefully identifying the terrain, Long Houchen sometimes even had to borrow Han Yu's evil eye to fly into the sky to assist with reconnaissance. Or he would let Lin Xian's rose unicorn fly into the sky to observe the terrain. The reason why Lin Xian didn't help him every time was because the rose unicorn was too conspicuous. They couldn't ask any demons and could only rely on their own judgment of the terrain and direction, as well as the location of the demon's city to determine their location. This was undoubtedly a difficult process. The past 10 days were like walking on thin ice. It could be said that it was even more difficult than the battle. If I'm not mistaken, we should be able to reach our destination after we cross over this mountain. Long Houchen took a deep breath. Even with his cultivation as an Earth Knight, he couldn't help but feel a strong sense of exhaustion. Lin Xian waved her arm forcefully. Are we finally there? That's great. As long as we complete the exploration of the cave, our mission will be considered complete. Lin Xian said, there's no time to lose. Why don't we rest near the Howling Fear Cave? Let's get there in one go. Long Houchen nodded slightly and said, if everyone is fine, let's start climbing the mountain. Just as they were about to move, suddenly, a group of people in the distance rushed in their direction. Everyone immediately stopped in their tracks. They didn't think that there would be any allies in the territory of the demons. Surprisingly, it was a group of cavalrymen, and every cavalryman was a 3-meter-tall great demon. The demon race was the mainstay of the entire demon race. They weren't the most numerous race, nor were they the most powerful, but they were the most balanced race. The demons were second only to the dual-bladed demons in terms of numbers, but the demons didn't only have imps that could be used as cannon fodder. There were existences ranging from imps to demon kings. The monarch of the demons was the 4th-ranked demon god of death, Samakina. Therefore, although the demons were numerous, there were people of all levels ranging from low-level imps to top-level demon god. Their overall strength was quite strong, second only to the demon gods' heaven-defying demon dragons. Even the first 2 demon gods were weaker than the demons in terms of overall strength. The demon god of death, Samakina, was also known as the demon lord in his race. All the clansmen only listened to his orders. The biggest characteristic of the demons was evolution. They were the race best at evolution. Even the weakest imp had the opportunity to advance to Demon King if he had enough opportunities. The demon cavalry in front of them was composed of grade 4 great demons. There were 50 of them, and their mounts were nightmare horses unique to the demons. The nightmare horses were pitch black with dark red stripes on their bodies. They had 2 horns on their heads like the demons, and their hooves were on fire. These nightmare beasts were rank 4 just like their master. It was said that the most powerful nightmare horses could advance to grade 9. The demon god of death, Samakina, was riding a powerful nightmare king. The gazes of the demon hunters of the 2 demon hunt squads simultaneously focused on Long Houchen. 12 versus 50. Moreover, 50 great demon knights riding on nightmare mounts, they didn't have the slightest bit of certainty. Moreover, they were already deep in the central province of the demons' territory. If they let even one enemy escape, they would be in big trouble. Long Houchen gestured for his companions to calm down. He walked to the front, put his hands behind his back, and stared at the approaching great demon cavalry with an arrogant expression. Soon, the great demon cavalry was close. The leader of the great demon cavalry was exceptionally tall, and the nightmare horse he rode was much more majestic than the other nightmare horses. With a flash of fire, the nightmare horse stopped about 20 meters away from Long Houchen. The great demon on the horse dismounted and walked quickly toward Long Houchen. This great demon had a pair of spiral horns, a pair of bat-like membranous wings, a majestic body, a pair of huge claws, a green face, and fangs. There was a strong stench on his body, and a faint green mist was emitting from his body. Among the demon clan, great demons were the absolute force. They were best at close combat, but they were more afraid of magic. This was especially true for fire magic. Being able to grow membranous wings meant that this great demon had reached grade 6 and could fly. At this level, he could be called a demon commander. Enough, stop. Keep your dirty body away from us, Long Houchen shouted coldly. The great demon actually stopped in its tracks. However, it let out an angry roar. Even if you are nobles of the Moon Demon clan, you cannot insult me, the leader of the demons. I need to know your title, Moon Demon. High-level demons could speak human language, and among them, the Moon Devils liked to speak human language the most. That was why Long Houchen was so generous to the great demon in front of him. But when the great demon spoke human language, it seemed a lot hoarse and jerky. Long Houchen coldly snorted. With a shake of his wrist, a token suddenly flew towards the great demon. The demon commander's broad palm hurriedly caught it. In the next moment, his dark green pupils violently trembled, and he almost dropped the token in his hand. His left leg suddenly stepped forward, and he unexpectedly knelt on one knee in front of Long Houchen. Honorable Moon Demon Viscount, I apologize for my rashness just now. I ask for your forgiveness. This demon commander unexpectedly became refined and courteous. Both hands holding the token, he didn't dare to approach. With a flash of white light, the token returned to Long Houchen's hand. It was the power of the Saint Spiritual Stove. The Saint Spiritual Stove's energy was unique, and it wasn't of the light attribute. So Long Houchen wasn't afraid of the other party seeing through it. Not letting the other party approach was the most important thing. After all, they were humans, and without the protection of the token, it would be very easy for the other party to discover them. Demons had a very sensitive sense of smell. Get up. Filthy bastard. Tell me, where are you going? Long Houchen's domineering appearance matched with his handsome appearance. He really did have the flavor of a hedonistic son of rich parent. However, it was his first time pretending to be this kind of identity, so he was obviously a bit inexperienced and immature. The demon commander respectfully said, Honorable Moon Demon Viscount, we are going to reinforce our clansmen who entered the Shrill Howl Cave. Shrill Howl Cave? Long Houchen's heart stirred. Where is it? How come I've never heard of it? The fiend commander said, This cave was discovered by our fiend race. The mighty fiend monarch Saminaga had already reported the existence of this cave to the even more mighty His Majesty the Demon God Emperor. According to our demon's judgment, there seems to be an unusual existence inside the Shrill Howl Cave. We are currently dispatching an advance party to investigate it. We received a distress signal from the scouting party and went to reinforce them. Although he was obviously afraid of Long Houchen's identity, he avoided mentioning the location of the Shrill Howl Cave. He also emphasized that the Demon Emperor already knew that the demons were investigating the cave. Long Houchen coldly snorted. If I'm not mistaken, the Shrill Howl Cave you speak of is on the other side of the mountain. The demon commander's expression changed greatly. His ferocious appearance became even more ferocious as he subconsciously asked, how do you know? Long Houchen proudly said, In this world, what else is there that our intelligent moon demons don't know? Don't worry, a small cave is nothing in our eyes. You can go and rescue them. Fram. While saying that, he quickly gestured to his companions with his right hand behind his back. They were at the foot of the mountain, which was no different from the other areas of the demons. Before the demon knights appeared, It could be said that there were no living creatures here. The demon commander felt as if he had been pardoned. After bowing to Long Houchen again, he quickly returned to the back of his succubus demon horse. With a wave of his hand, he led the 50 demon knights forward. There was a relatively flat terrain there. With the succubus demon horse's ability, it could easily climb up. Since they were moving forward, they naturally had to pass by Long Houchen and the others. Just as the demon knight passed by 1/3 of the group, Long Houchen suddenly shouted, "Attack!" An enormous silhouette suddenly appeared in front of him without any warning. Immediately afterwards, more than 10 specks of light fell on the members of the 2 demon hunt squads, and in the next instant, the terrifying energy formed by the tricolored light pillars spread out explosively. The hand gesture that Long Houchen made earlier had 2 meanings: prepare for battle and leave no one alive. Chapter 78. Do it. Long Houchen's roar caused the peaceful scene to change abruptly. The moment Hao Yue's huge body appeared, the chaos element stripping had already been activated. Only those who were affected by the light spots it released would not be affected. When the great demon cavalryman appeared, Long Houchen had already started preparing for battle. After the battle with Yu Ye's merchant caravan, Long Houchen had communicated with Hao Yue. Hao Yue told him that due to its evolution, using the chaos element stripping would consume about 80% of its spiritual power. When Long Houchen and the rest entered the territory of the demons and had to abandon the iron mane horses, Hao Yue chose to forage for food alone. After all, it would be too obvious if it followed Long Houchen. Furthermore, with the blood contract teleportation ability, Long Houchen did not have to worry about its safety. The moment Long Houchen saw the great demon cavalryman, he had already asked Hao Yue to prepare for the chaos element stripping. At that time, he had not decided whether to fight with these great demons. However, it was better to be prepared. Although Hao Yue had consumed a lot of spiritual power, it would only take him 1 to 2 hours to recover. However, once the battle started, the chaos element stripping would be very useful in a team battle. If it was not for Hao Yue's skill, Long Houchen and Ling Xiao would not have been able to hold on when the great avian demons appeared. However, it wasn't something that just anyone could do if they wanted to activate their magic after teleportation. Only the blood contract teleportation could be achieved. At the same time, Hao Yue's special body allowed him to maintain his magic during the teleportation process. Even a summoning magician could not do these 2 things. The tricolored light of the chaos element stripping instantly spread out. This time, it had a diameter of more than 50 meters, engulfing all 50 great demon cavalrymen. In an instant, it could be clearly seen that both the great demons and the shapeshifters beneath them were emitting thick black fog. Screams of agony instantly caused chaos in the cavalry. Great demons mainly fought with their physical bodies, but most of the powerful demons combined magic and martial arts. The moon devils were like this, the defiant demon dragons were like this, and the demons were the same. The power of any level of demons was dark spiritual energy. They could absorb the dark elements in the air and improve their cultivation through digestion and absorption, gradually achieving the goal of evolution. Therefore, when the great evil demons fought, any of their attacks would be imbued with the dark attribute, and the power was quite tyrannical. But at the same time, their bodies were also filled with the dark attribute. Even a simple melee powerhouse would be attacked by the violent magical elements during the chaos elemental stripping, not to mention the existence of dark elements in the greater demons. The sudden eruption of black mist was the scene of the dark elements being stripped from their bodies. Not only that, but the most powerful aspect of the chaos element stripping spell was that the more types of magical elements were added, the more powerful it would be. The more intense the relationship between the elements, the more powerful the spell would be. One of the 3 elements released by Hao Yue was the light element. When light met darkness, it was even more intense than when water met fire. The moment the black fog rose from the cavalrymen's bodies, a series of explosions sounded from their bodies. At least a third of the great evil demons were blown to the ground from the back of the shapeshifters. Although the shapeshifters had a stronger defense, countless cracks could be seen on their black and red bodies, and dark blood spurted out in the burning flames. Naturally, Haoyue was not the only one who attacked. The demon hunters were ready to fight when they saw Long Haochen's hand gesture. At the same time, when the chaos element stripping spell erupted, Kair, who was not far behind Long Haochen, disappeared, and the attacks of the others broke out in full force. Ending the battle as soon as possible meant going all out. This was the central province of the demons. There was a possibility of encountering powerful demons at any time, so they had to end the battle as quickly as possible. Wang Yuanyuan swung the divine soul shield in her hand, shining with a brilliant silver light. The 3 gems on the shield's surface had already been embedded. Spinning shield spatial rend. The great evil demon cavalryman's weapons were spears. Under the terrifying attack of the chaos element stripping spell, they could only barely raise their spears to block the terrifying attack. Meanwhile, the shapeshifters were frantically struggling to escape, so how could they be of any help to them? A series of explosions echoed. 5 of the great evil demon cavalrymen, who had not fallen to the ground due to the chaos element stripping spell, were struck by the spinning shield spatial rend. Not even Long Haochen dared to face the might of the divine soul shield head-on. Not to mention, Wang Yuanyuan, who was a Tier 5 great evil demon, had the strength to crush these Tier 4 great evil demons. 5 corpses were sent flying and fell to the ground. Sima Xian had also dealt with the 5 great evil demon cavalrymen. He pointed his staff forward, and 5 milky white bullets the size of a human head shot out. They carried a vast aura of the light element and ruthlessly bombarded the chests of the 5 great evil demons. Holy Bullet Array. This was one of the new skills that Sima Xian had learned. At this moment, he really did look like a priest. Although he was a violent priest, the density of the light element in his body was even higher than Lu Shi's. It must not be forgotten that after becoming Long Haochen's retainer knight, this 9-headed priest's innate internal spiritual energy was only raised to a terrifying 80. One could only imagine the power of the light element. The attack power of the Holy Bullet Array was quite powerful. It had almost drained 30% of Sima Xian's spiritual energy. Light restrained darkness. Moreover, the great evil demons had their darkness element stripped away, leaving only their bodies that had been corroded by darkness. How could they withstand the might of the Holy Bullet? Although it wasn't as terrifying as Wang Yuanyuan's direct beheading, the 5 great evil demons were still thrown off their horses and suffered heavy injuries. Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, and the Holy Spirit's sword appeared in Long Haochen's hands at the same time. Charge. Pure White Blade, Lunging Stab, Lightning Stab, Rising Spell, Glorious Sun Slash, Light Slash, Light Slash, and many other Punishment Knight skills flowed smoothly from Long Haochen's hands. The tyrannical liquid spiritual energy dyed the 2 heavy swords in his hands a rich gold. Every time he attacked, at least one great evil demon or a nightmare horse would fall to his sword. The light elemental fairy Yiting floated behind Long Haochen and chanted. One after another, light magic was used on Long Haochen's body. Yiting had become Long Haochen's spiritual stove. It could be said that it was a perfect combination. With the help of the Scion of Light's constitution, Yiting had already completed 2 evolutions. After the battle with the caravan, although she had consumed a lot of energy, it only took 2 days for her to completely recover to her peak state. When she was together with Long Haochen, her ability to summon light elements increased exponentially. With her around, Long Haochen's internal spiritual energy, which recovered faster than ordinary people, recovered twice as fast. Moreover, a layer of fire of light ignited around his body. When they attacked, they were in the middle of the great evil demon cavalry. The 13 demon hunters burst out with their strongest attacks at the same time. In the short span of a few breaths, they gave the great evil demon cavalry a terrifying blow. Only the 7 or 8 great evil demons at the front, including the demon commander, were able to quickly rush out of the magic range after being hit by the chaos elemental stripping attack. The great evil demon cavalry behind them fell deeper into the magic range because of the momentum. Kai, after Long Houchen cut down 2 nightmare horses, he suddenly shouted. A strange scene appeared. About 3 meters above the ground, a black figure unexpectedly appeared out of thin air. Immediately after, a white light burst out from Long Houchen's chest. At the same time, among the 3 heads of Haoyue, Shaoqing spat out a levitation spell and landed on his body. In the next moment, Long Houchen, under the pull of the white light, flew towards Kai at lightning speed. The enemies in the rear were no longer a problem. The 2 monster hunters were enough to deal with them, but they couldn't let the demon commander at the front escape. The saint's spiritual stoves pulling skill produced an extremely exquisite coordination under the tacit cooperation of Long Houchen and Kai. By the time the demon commander discovered that something was wrong, the chaos elemental stripping had already brought it enormous pain. No matter what race it was, after suffering a sudden attack, the first thing to do was to survive, and the second was to investigate the cause. Therefore, when the nightmare horse under him rushed out of the range of the chaos elemental stripping, the first thing the demon commander did was to turn around and look back. The great demon cavalrymen who rushed out with him also did the same. What they saw was the chaos behind them, as well as the tragic scene of the great demon cavalrymen being massacred. At this time, Long Houchen and Kai had already caught up. Long Houchen was pulled by Kai to his side. He embraced Kai-er's soft and delicate body, and his body suddenly spun in the air before he threw Kai-er with all his strength. The black figure in the air was like a black meteor as it flew towards the direction of the demon commander. Long Houchen took advantage of the time when the effects of his levitation spell had yet to disappear, and once again used the saint's spiritual stoves pulling skill. Using his chi to lighten his body, he followed the thrown Kai and caught up to the demon commander. Thousands of white lights burst out from Kai-er's body, and the 2 great demon cavalrymen who bore the brunt of the attack were turned into sieves along with their mounts. They were only at the 4th step, and compared to the 5th step dark green dual-bladed demons, their defense was not just a little bit lacking. The great demon cavalrymen's specialty was that they focused on offense and not defense. Although their bodies were also very tough, they still couldn't compare to the demons with their carapace defense. In the next moment, Long Houchen also arrived. He raised his heavy sword with both hands, and simultaneously slashed at the demon commander with the double glorious sun slash. At this time, the demon commander could be said to be shocked and angry at the same time. Even if he was an idiot, when he saw the blazing golden spiritual power on Long Houchen's body, he could guess that these weren't demons at all. The demon commander raised his spear, and with a loud bang, it blocked Long Houchen's 2 swords. However, the nightmare horse under him stumbled back several steps. Challenging someone of a higher rank was extremely difficult to accomplish on the Holy Demon Continent, because there was a qualitative difference between each rank. However, this wasn't the first time that Long Houchen had challenged someone of a higher rank. He had too many advantages that ordinary people didn't have. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be easy for Long Houchen to defeat the demon commander riding on a 5th-step nightmare horse without Haoyue's help. He would definitely fall into a bitter battle, and even if he won, it would probably be a Pyrrhic victory. However, the demon commander had just suffered an attack of chaos elemental stripping. Its cultivation was at the 6th step, and it was far from the pinnacle of the 6th step. Therefore, it had completely endured the power of the spell, and a large amount of its dark element had been stripped away, and its body had suffered a certain degree of damage. This caused the overall strength of the demon commander to be greatly reduced. Moreover, the current Long Houchen was a punishment knight, and the punishment knight was the most proficient in explosive attack. The powerful recoil threw Long Houchen into the air, but in the next moment, His body was already spinning rapidly. Battle-slaying revolving sword. The light elemental fairy Yiting floated to a relatively far position and continuously chanted an incantation. When Long Houchen's first slash landed on the demon commander's spear, an intense holy light erupted in an instant. Under the circumstances where the demon commander resisted with all its might, a shocking gap appeared on its spear. The limbs of the nightmare horse stiffened, and a few deep footprints were left on the ground. Holy Sword. Yiting had released the power of the Holy Sword in Long Houchen's first attack. The combat power of the nightmare horse was also displayed at this moment. A faint layer of black light surged from its body, and drilled into the body of the demon commander. At the same time, it opened its mouth, as if it wanted to spit something out. After spitting for a long time, it could only spit out a few mouthfuls of black gas. It looked a little awkward. Greater Demon's combat style was close combat, but the nightmare horse relied more on the dark element. They ran like the wind, and were proficient in dark magic attacks. It was precisely because of this that the damage they suffered from the chaos element stripping was much more severe than the greater demons. As a result, the majority of the dark element of the rank 5 nightmare horse was stripped away, and could only barely support the demon commander. It could not directly use dark magic to attack Long Houchen. Boom! The 13th strike of the battle-slaying revolving sword once again erupted with the power of the Holy Sword, and the spear in the demon commander's hand broke in half. However, this demon commander was indeed valiant. Its pair of giant claws continuously struck the air, and it actually relied on the toughness of its body to block the attack of Long Houchen's battle-slaying revolving sword. Every time its sharp claws came into contact with the battle-slaying revolving sword, there would be a burst of black smoke. This was the corrosion of light against darkness. However, what was surprising was that its sharp claws only left a mark. Unfortunately, it was easier said than done to rely on such a method to block the battle-slaying revolving sword, which would become more powerful the longer it was attacked. The demon commander finally could not withstand it anymore. Pooh! 3 of the fingers on its right claw were forcibly cut off, and the demon commander let out a miserable cry. At the same time, its body suddenly fell to the side. It was not being chopped off, but it was voluntarily falling. The battle-slaying revolving sword naturally followed, but just as the demon commander was about to fall to the ground, it suddenly pulled on the nightmare horse, and its body instantly shifted horizontally, using the nightmare horse to block in front of it. The nightmare horse had previously done its best to support it, but its own strength was insufficient, and it was also weakened by the chaos element stripping. Moreover, its owner had betrayed it, so how could it possibly block this attack from Long Houchen? An ear-piercing shattering sound erupted in an instant, and the huge nightmare horse was instantly torn apart by the powerful battle-slaying revolving sword like a rag, and its flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The demon commander did not take this opportunity to attack Long Houchen, and instead quickly fled into the distance. Its pair of wide claws gave it a powerful stepping ability, and with a single leap, it could rush more than 10 meters away. Long Houchen took a deep breath, and the blue rain and hibiscus of light shone brightly. The blue and gold lights in the sky turned into a dazzling rainbow, and chased after the demon commander. It was the luminous rain hibiscus thorn. Water was all-pervasive, and light could penetrate through all openings. The demon commander clearly sensed the danger behind it, and suddenly turned around, its pair of huge claws clasped in front of its chest, and a thick black color instantly surged out from its chest, turning into a ball of black light. Poison. The demon commander's huge body was hit by the terrifying attack of the luminous rain hibiscus thorn, and its pair of arms were shattered inch by inch. However, what was shocking was that it was still not dead, and after landing on the ground, it actually started to run again, trying to escape. At the same time, a black light also shot up into the sky from its body. Such a strong life force. Long Houchen was shocked. He did not expect that even his luminous rain hibiscus thorn would not be able to end its life. At this time, he had also expended a lot of energy, and even with Yiting's help, it was impossible for him to catch up to it. At this moment, a red light swept across the sky like a red cloud, and the black light that shot up into the sky was instantly intercepted. At the same time, the fiery red figure was like a falling meteor, and it ruthlessly smashed towards the demon commander that had lost both its arms. The blazing light created a 5-meter-long flaming knife in the sky, and it ruthlessly struck the demon commander's crippled body. In the midst of a shrill scream, the demon commander was finally struck to the ground, and it could no longer get up. The light disappeared, and Lin Xian, who was riding the rose unicorn, appeared. She looked at Long Haochen apologetically. The achievement of the monster hunters was recorded by killing the demons. In other words, the achievement of this demon commander was recorded by Lin Xian. Long Haochen looked around. The battle was completely over. With the powerful effect of Haoyue's chaos element stripping, the battle was resolved much easier than expected. The demon cavalry's charge on the battlefield was indeed very powerful. With the cooperation of the nightmare demon horses, they even had the capital to contend with the Radiant Angel Knight team. Of course, the premise was that the demon cavalry's numbers were at least 3 times that of the Radiant Angel Knight team. Unfortunately, the opponent they encountered today was too cunning. The sudden sneak attack and the terror of the chaos element stripping became the demon cavalry's nightmare. Under the impact of the chaos element, the nightmare demon horses at the back did not even have the strength to rush out of the encirclement. Moreover, the sudden outburst of the 2 monster hunters was very powerful, be it in terms of attack or restraining ability. The few great demons and their mounts that had escaped with the demon commander had all fallen under Kai Er's attack. Lin Xian dragged the demon commander's corpse before Long Haochen and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Long Haochen. I didn't mean to steal your achievement points. I'll test how much this demon commander can provide, and then I'll return it to you." Long Haochen frowned. "Sister, when did you become so distant? Moreover, it was because of you that this great demon was prevented from spreading the news. This meritorious deed is what you deserve." But Lin Xian wanted to say something else, but Long Haochen walked up and gently hugged her. "Sister, no matter how strong I am, I'm still your brother. In my heart, you're my real sister." Yes, he could feel the recent changes in Lin Xian's emotions. Because Long Haochen was getting stronger and stronger, the radiance he emitted was also getting more and more dazzling. Lin Xian could not see through this brother of hers that she was not related to by blood. She could even feel the majesty of the teenage Long Haochen. Because of her special position, she rarely spoke to Long Haochen, afraid that it would affect him negatively. At this moment, Long Haochen's hug and words caused Lin Xian to be unable to control the sibling relationship in her heart. She hugged him tightly as tears flowed down her face. Kai came to Long Haochen's side and stood there silently. Her big eyes blinked a few times, but she didn't show any jealousy. As the owner of the spiritual stove of samsara, her perception was higher than Long Haochen's. She could clearly feel that Lin Xian's feelings for Long Haochen were completely different from her own feelings for Long Haochen. On the contrary, when Lin Xian saw Kai, she hurriedly let go of Long Haochen's arms and hurriedly said to Kai, "Don't misunderstand." A rare smile appeared in Kai's eyes. "Why would I misunderstand?" Long Haochen held Kai's little hand. The two looked at each other and felt the complete trust between them. He could not help but feel warm in his heart. "Sister, now is not a good time to talk. Let's quickly clean up the battlefield and leave this place." Cleaning up the battlefield was naturally very busy, and the busiest person was naturally a certain miser. Lin Xian's actions really made people unable to restrain their laughter. This guy's space storage device finally could not bear the burden and was filled to the brim. However, he also had his own ways. One by one, the mad demons and avian demons' corpses were thrown out, and the great demons and succubi's corpses were stored inside. His face still looked as if he had won the battle. The soldier level 4 monster hunters had also learned their lesson. They did not hesitate to use their own space storage devices to store the corpses. However, the corpses of these great fiends and nightmare horses took up too much space, and there weren't many people like Lin Xian who had a storage magic tool with such a large capacity. In the end, they could only take away about half of the spoils of war. Lin Xian accepted the demon commander's reward, but she resolutely gave up the demon commander's corpse, including the magic crystal. Lin Xian naturally would not let go of the demon commander's corpse and the high-level demon's corpses. He even kept the rank 5 succubi's corpse. Lin Xian could not help but whisper to Long Haochen, "This guy's combat ability is not that great, but he is very greedy." Long Haochen smiled and said, "Sister, don't be prejudiced against him. Everyone in our team has an important role to play, and no one can be left out. Lin Xian is even more so." Lin Xian's heart trembled. She suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, brother. I did not mean to drive a wedge between you and your teammates." Long Haochen shook his head and said, "Sister, I am speaking the truth. Just wait and see. If there really is a huge danger in the Wailing Howl Cave, Lin Xian's role will come into play." Up until now, other than Long Haochen who had used a great recovery pill, the others had not used the pills he gave them. Chen Ying had only used one of her magic crystals. During the battle with Yu Ye's merchant team, these trump cards were kept as a last resort once the forbidden spell was broken. These were all precious resources that could not be used unless it was absolutely necessary. "Boss, we can't take them away. Should we destroy the corpses?" Sima Xian asked loudly towards Long Haochen. Long Haochen thought for a moment and said, "No need. Dig out the magic crystals and pile up the corpses. I will let Haoyue set the place on fire." The corpses of the demon birds and mad demons that Lin Xian had thrown out had given him an inspiration. The demons of Narik province had already committed a serious crime by attacking the Yu Ye's merchant team. He did not mind adding another crime to the list. As for burning the corpses, it was naturally to cover up the traces of the battle. The traces left behind by the demon hunters were naturally different from those left behind by the demon birds, mad demons, and great demons. However, who could tell after the corpses were burned? As the great demons did not spread any news, there was no time to clean up the battlefield. With Han Yu's evil eye in the sky and Lu Shi's eye of truth, there was no need to worry about the demons sneaking up on them. Half an hour later, when the flames were burning, Long Haochen led his companions and quietly went up the mountain. This time, Long Haochen did not let Haoyue leave. As they were approaching the Howling Cave of Fear, Long Haochen's strength would increase greatly with Haoyue by his side. Haoyue was not only able to use the separation of chaos elements, but more importantly, it had a tacit understanding with Long Haochen. That kind of tacit understanding originated from their bloodline. Even Kai Er could not compare. While climbing the mountain, the two monster hunters were a little excited. Due to the separation of chaos elements, the battle with the great demon cavalrymen was not too difficult. However, it had brought them extremely rich rewards. Even the soldier level 4 monster hunters had obtained a lot of magic crystals. These magic crystals could not be used by them, but they could be exchanged for merit points. Although the great demon cavalryman and the nightmare demon horse were both rank 4, they were part of the cavalrymen, so their overall strength was stronger than the jade dual-bladed demons. Therefore, killing the great demon cavalryman and the nightmare demon horse gave them a total of 15 merit points. In addition to the rank 6 demon commander and its mount, this ambush had brought the two teams a total of thousands of merit points. Moreover, as the number of battles increased, whether it was the tacit understanding of the team or the stimulation of individual potential, the overall strength of the two monster hunters continued to rise. Almost all of the higher-ups of the Temple League had gone through the training of the monster hunters. This was because the monster hunters were the easiest way for them to grow. Of course, the monster hunters also had the highest number of casualties. Out of the 10 monster hunters in a year, only 3 of them could survive for more than 20 years. Once the monster hunters lost members, they would be disbanded and the alliance would arrange for other positions. The sky was gloomy. After entering the demons' territory, this kind of gloomy weather had accompanied them almost all the time. There was only one day when they saw the sun. The mountain that the 2 monster hunters were climbing wasn't very high. It was about 700 or 800 meters tall. Everyone was still wearing the lunar demon aristocratic attire. In less than half an hour, they were already standing on the peak. Looking down from the peak, there was a mountain range in the distance. It was the same as the map showed. This mountain range was also connected to a large number of hills. Even the mountains weren't very tall. Perhaps it was because the demons' territory had too little sunlight. Regardless of whether it was the mountains or the hills, there was very little vegetation. Now that it was winter, it was even more barren, giving off a bleak and desolate feeling. Long Houchen spread out the map again and compared the terrain on the map. When they accepted the mission, they received 2 maps. The first was the rough location of the cave, and the second was a detailed map of this mountain range. There was a red mark on the map, which was naturally the true location of the cave. The others surrounded Long Houchen, helping him block the mountain wind so that they could look at the map. The Howling Cave that the demon commander mentioned just now should be our destination, the Howling Fear Cave. We cut off the demons' reinforcements and didn't let them spread the news. There shouldn't be any reinforcements for a few days. According to the strength of the reinforcements and the situation of the demons' request for help, the remaining demons over there shouldn't be a problem. Right now, the biggest threat to us is the danger of the cave itself. If it wasn't because the great demon cavalryman's destination was the Howling Fear Cave, Long Houchen wouldn't have let his companions take the risk. However, after confirming that the other party was reinforcements over at the cave, he didn't hesitate to give the order to fight. This was a decisive decision. Once the great demon cavalrymen entered the Howling Fear Cave, they would definitely arouse the other party's suspicion if they followed them. They wouldn't be able to catch them off guard and attack them. Moreover, if the 2 sides of the demons met up, the difficulty of the battle would greatly increase. The best choice was to deal with the reinforcements first. It should be over there. Long Houchen pointed to the other side of the mountain. Because it was a call, he couldn't see it clearly. However, according to the map, it should be in that direction. Right at this moment, a sharp howl suddenly rang out without any warning. Woo! An ear-piercing howl reverberated through the mountains. The ghostly wails and wolf howls carried a series of echoes, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. This was not the only howl. More and more howls reverberated through the mountains. The howls became more and more impassioned. As the howls grew louder, it was as if the mountains were trembling under the howls. The strong sound waves even caused some gravel to fall, producing a terrifying collision sound. Everyone subconsciously covered their ears. This kind of heart-palpitating sound would cause them to feel a strong sense of fear in their hearts. The girls' faces turned pale. The howl lasted for nearly 15 minutes before it gradually disappeared. Although it didn't have any direct killing power, it was as terrifying as the heavens in the mountains. This should be coming from the Howling Fear Cave. If it was in the cave, I'm afraid our ears would be deafened. Lu, she said with an ugly expression. Soldier level number 4 Monster Hunters Space Magician E. June said, "This is indeed a problem. My space magic can block the sound to a certain extent, but it requires continuous consumption of spiritual power. I'm afraid it won't last long. I can still hold on for 5 minutes. If we don't consider the excessive consumption of spiritual power, I can hold on for about 10 minutes. Long Houchen nodded and said, "Who else has the ability to block the sound?" The others stared at each other for a long time. Finally, the one who spoke was Chen Inger. I have 2 space attribute magic crystals that can transform Madul into a level 6 space demon. It should be able to protect him for a while, but I think it can only last for 5 minutes. If I cooperate with Jun, it should be possible to hold on for 15 minutes. The problem is, I only have 2. Long Houchen nodded and said, let's go, let's find the cave first. Before we have a complete solution to the howling sound in the cave, let's not go in. The speed of going down the mountain was naturally faster than going up. In another hour, they had already reached the side of another mountain. However, they still did not see the mountain. Just as they began to look for the Howling Fear cave, the howling sound appeared again. Due to the close distance, the moment the howling sound appeared, everyone felt dizzy. They hurriedly gathered together and used their spiritual power to protect their ears, trying to block the terrifying sound waves as much as possible. However, the howling sound was obviously not that easy to block. The powerful sound waves not only attacked them through their ears, but also directly caused strong vibrations to their bodies. Even the spiritual power in their bodies was consumed due to the vibrations. The sound waves were obviously stronger, but it was not completely unbearable. After all, the loudest explosion of the sound waves was only after it reverberated through the mountains. At this moment, suddenly, a few figures came out from behind a protruding rock about 50 meters away from them. All of them covered their ears with all their might, as if they were running for their lives. Demons. The first to come out was a great demon. Behind him were 2 slender demon warlocks wearing long robes and holding black staffs. Behind them, there were 5 or 6 little demons. These little demons looked the most miserable. Many of them had black blood flowing out of their mouths, noses, and the corners of their eyes. It was obvious that they could not withstand the powerful sound waves in the Howling Fear cave. Long Houchen waved his hand forward, and the soldier level number 4 Monster Hunter's assassin, Han Daosi, rushed out. At the same time, a silver light that was filled with spatial fluctuations appeared. These demons were clearly very weak. Long Houchen did not expect to get anything out of their mouths and quickly get rid of them. Lu Shi muttered a few incantations and raised the staff in her hand. A layer of golden light rippled out and enveloped everyone. Immediately, the feeling of irritation caused by the howling was greatly reduced. This was a priest's calm incantation. The howling continued for about a quarter of an hour before disappearing. The 2 Monster Hunters' 13 members felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. As they got closer, the power of the howling also became much stronger. However, they used their own spiritual power to block it and finally managed to withstand it. Chapter 79. Searching in the direction where the demons had appeared, Long Houchen and his companions finally found the destination of the trip, the Howling Fear cave. Rather than calling it a cave, it was better to call it a crack. The crack was about 3 meters wide and 6 or 7 meters high. It was dark inside, and it was unknown how deep it was. Around the crack at the entrance of the cave, there were many fine cracks, apparently caused by the terrifying sound wave. Using spiritual power to test it, one could feel that the rocks here were extremely hard, far stronger than granite. After observing the situation here, everyone's eyes focused on Long Houchen. Lin Xian said snappily, "The Alliance's mission is really not good. They didn't tell us clearly that the howling here was so terrible that we weren't prepared at all." Long Houchen thought about it and said, "I estimate that the demons won't send reinforcements for 3 days. So, you guys dig a cave on the side of the mountain, and then everyone rest inside. Block the entrance with some stones. This way we can minimize the threat of the howling. I'll test the strength of the howling inside the cave first at the entrance of the cave. Let's see how long we can hold on with our own abilities." Lu Shi said, "Leader, you are the leader of the whole team, how can you take the risk? Let me do it. I'm a magician. If I can bear it, everyone should be fine." Long Houchen shook his head and said, No one knows what's in this cave, and you don't have much defense. What if another great demon comes out? Everyone, no need to say anything. I'll be at the entrance of the cave and won't go deep. Once I find that I can't hold on, I'll come out. Lin Xin, prepare something that can block our ears. We'll isolate our hearing as much as possible, and the impact will be smaller. Okay. What is a real leader? A real leader has to face difficulties and take on the most dangerous task. This is also an important reason why Long Haochen can get everyone's approval. Long Haochen squeezed Kai Er's hand, indicating that he would be fine. Then, he strode into the cave. The inside of the cave was very dusky, but this wasn't a problem for Long Haochen. Yiting the light elemental fairy floated out and flew in front of him. A faint golden light blossomed from her perfectly proportioned body, and the gentle light elements immediately illuminated the surroundings. Less than 10 meters into the cave, the corpses of the two imps appeared in Long Haochen's vision. Ignoring them, Long Haochen continued to go deeper. Of course, it was impossible for him to withstand the howling at the entrance of the cave. He had to go deeper to truly feel the intensity of the howling. The cold air reverberated in the cave. This place was much colder than the outside world, and the air was also slightly turbid. Long Haochen did not advance very quickly. As he walked, he carefully observed the surrounding stone walls. He discovered that these stone walls did not have any traces of man-made excavation. It was as if the mountain had split open on its own. Only, the stone walls were similar to the entrance of the cave. There were cracks everywhere caused by the howling. There was no path under his feet, only jagged rocks of strange shapes, making it even more difficult to walk. There was no light in the cave, and the mountain that seemed to have split open was extremely irregular. There were bends everywhere. Even with the light elements emitted by Yiting, Long Haochen could only see less than 10 meters ahead. As Long Haochen walked, he silently calculated the distance he had traveled. Just as he advanced for about 200 meters, suddenly, the road in front of him was cut off. A huge crack appeared in front of him. This crack was vertical, and the bottom could not be seen. Waving the Holy Spirit sword, a light-severing sword slashed into the crack. Under the illumination of the light-severing sword, Long Haochen could roughly see tens of meters below the crack. Sucking in a breath of cold air, Long Haochen's handsome face was filled with shock. Inside the crack, there were jagged, broken rocks everywhere. There were indeed many places where he could borrow strength, but he could not tell how deep this crack was. Moreover, he could clearly feel a faint wave of spiritual power drifting out of this crack. Although this wave of spiritual power was very faint, it had a ferocious aura, as if it was a monster that chose its prey. Other than the two little demons who had just entered the cave, Long Haochen did not see the corpses of other demons. It was very likely that the demons had already gone deep into the cave, but did not come back up. What was in the depths of this crack? Although the crack was very wide, it was filled with sharp rock. In this kind of terrain, if he encountered a strong enemy, he would not be able to use his skills. For a moment, he could not help but frown. The path ahead did not diverge, which meant that the only goal was to go deep into the crack in front of him. At the same time, the howling was probably coming from this cave. Not rashly entering the cave, Long Haochen took a few steps back and found a relatively flat place to lean against the mountain wall and sit down. He adjusted his breathing and waited quietly. Since this cave was filled with unknown dangers, he had to advance in the most stable way. He would try his best to limit all the dangers to a controllable range. He did not have to wait too long. When the howling appeared for the third time, Long Haochen's first reaction was actually to heave a sigh of relief. The reason why he was relieved was not because the howling's power had weakened in the cave, but because of the time. The interval between the three howls was almost exactly the same. In this case, at least it gave them enough time to prepare and predict. If the time of the howling was uncertain, it would be much more troublesome. However, Long Haochen's relief only lasted for a moment. Just as he expected, the howling was much more powerful in the cave. The ear-piercing howling caused the whole cave to tremble violently. Yiting immediately went back into Long Houchen's body. Holy light cover. Long Houchen released this skill to block the howling as much as possible. At the same time, he concentrated and circulated his liquid internal spiritual power throughout his body to resist the attack of the howling. When the howling was heard outside, it was more of a mournful sound. However, inside the cave, Long Houchen felt an obvious change. While the mournful sound increased, because it was inside the cave, the howling was more condensed, and the power it produced was even greater. The violent tremors seemed to want to tear Long Houchen apart. Under this terrifying tremor, cracks appeared on the holy light cover and it collapsed. The speed of the tremor was too fast. Long Houchen's mind was connected to the holy light cover. The moment the holy light cover broke, he could not help but groan. However, at the same time, an idea flashed in his mind. He maintained his original posture, and even tried to maintain the previous state of circulating his spiritual power as much as possible. The second holy light cover was released. Most of the time, inspiration would only appear for a very short period of time. The reason why Long Houchen did his best to maintain his original posture was to prevent this inspiration from slipping away. A moment later, the second holy light cover broke again. Although the howling in the cave was strong, Long Houchen was a rank 5 powerhouse after all. Even a great demon could barely resist this howling, so how could he not resist it? Under the effect of that strange inspiration, Long Houchen did not feel irritated by the howling. Instead, the light in his golden eyes became brighter and brighter. Holy light cover was only a rank 3 skill of the Guardian Knight. With Long Houchen's current spiritual power, releasing hundreds of them wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, he had the help of the light elemental fairy Yiting. The holy light covers broke one after another. Long Houchen did not move, nor did he try anything. He just firmly grasped that inspiration and did not let it escape. He silently felt it. In his heart, a strong sense of excitement gradually welled up. As that feeling became clearer and clearer, so did the excitement. Long Houchen, who had an innate internal spiritual power of 99%, could be said to have the highest perception among all the night hunters in the continent. In addition, his innate spiritual power was abnormal, and his perception far exceeded that of an ordinary person. Apart from Kair, no one could compare to him in terms of perception and comprehension. Opportunities were always left to those who were prepared. In that trace of enlightenment, Long Houchen's face gradually revealed a trace of a smile. When the howling disappeared, Long Houchen instead felt a sense of loss. However, that inspiration would never run away, because it had completely turned into Long Houchen's comprehension. A faint purple light appeared on Long Houchen's forehead. In the next moment, he disappeared from the depths of the cave. With a flash of purple light, Long Houchen appeared beside Haoyue. At this moment, under the joint efforts of the two monster hunters, a simple stone cave had been excavated. Long Houchen's sudden appearance gave everyone a fright, almost causing a situation where swords were drawn. "It's me," Long Houchen said hurriedly. Everyone looked at him with their eyes wide open, even Kair was no exception. Because the way he appeared was too strange. He was a knight. An assassin who was not good at hiding himself. Long Houchen smiled and said, "We're all on the same side, so I won't hide it from you. Haoyue and I have a blood contract. Therefore, under the condition that we're connected by blood, we can instantly teleport to each other. Therefore, no matter what danger we face, as long as Haoyue is outside, I have the confidence to escape." The general level number 21 monster hunters were a bit better, but the 6 soldier level number 4 monster hunters, except for Lin Xian, felt as if they were looking at a ghost. They were even depressed that they weren't on the same monster hunters as Long Houchen. Long Houchen said, "As we expected, the howling in the cave is even stronger, and there's a strong sound wave that has a great impact on spiritual power. However, according to my test just now, I'll need to use about 20% of my spiritual power to withstand a wave of howling. Based on everyone's strength, I estimate that I'll need to use about 40% of my spiritual power at most. If we cooperate with each other and use our group defense skills, we should be able to control the consumption to about 10% each time. Moving in the cave shouldn't be a problem. However, in the depths of the cave, I found a crack that led downward. It was so deep that I couldn't see the bottom. That was where the howling sound came from. We don't know what's inside, but I can feel that there's a vicious spiritual power fluctuation inside. It's very likely that there are demonic beasts or unknown threats inside. Everyone has seen my ability to protect myself just now, so I intend to explore deeper by myself. This time, I'll use the scouting gem to start recording. I'll go with you, Kyer asked Long Houchen. Long Houchen shook his head and said, "It's better for me to go by myself. With Haoyue here, I'll be able to teleport out at any time." Kyer nodded silently. Indeed, with Long Houchen's current strength, as long as he wasn't killed in an instant by an enemy that suddenly appeared, there was no need to worry about his safety. But to kill him in an instant was easier said than done. Don't forget, he had the soul chain on him, sharing his life with his 6 other companions. Even a Type 8 powerhouse might not be able to kill him in an instant. Even Kyer had agreed. The others naturally had no reason to disagree. Long Houchen expressed that using the scouting gem to record the entire process had already proven to everyone that he had no selfish motive. Even if something good was discovered, it would be recorded by the scouting gem. It had to be said, the teleportation ability of the Blood Pact was perfect for this sort of scouting mission. This was also the reason why Long Houchen decided to accept the mission even though he knew the difficulty was high. After resting for a while, Long Houchen entered the Cave of Terror for the second time. Because of his previous exploration experience, he once again arrived in front of the deep crack in the crypt with ease. However, he did not rush ahead, and stopped at the place he was previously sitting at. When the shrill howl rang out for the 4th time, Long Houchen actually revealed a satisfied smile on his face. When he activated his holy light barrier once again, a strange scene appeared. On the surface, Long Houchen's holy light barrier did not seem to have changed much, but if one looked closely, one would realize that the originally faint golden holy light barrier had an additional hazy feeling. Vibrating, yes, the holy light barrier was vibrating, and it was vibrating at the same frequency as the shrill howl. This was what Long Houchen had comprehended, and he called it the light ripple. The inspiration he had grasped just now was the rule and trajectory of the sound waves in the shrill howl, as well as the way the energy contained in the sound waves rippled. At this moment, he copied this movement and trajectory onto his own spiritual power. Although it was still very shaky, the holy light barrier lasted twice as long before it shattered under the bombardment of the sound wave. Undisguised excitement appeared on his handsome face, and Long Houchen used the holy light barrier for the second time. The first time he had come here, he had comprehended, but this time, he had come to experiment and cultivate. Relying on his extraordinary comprehension and perception, he was finally able to perfectly resonate with the sound waves when he used the holy light barrier for the 5th time, as if it was a part of the sound waves. Not only did it isolate the shrill howl, it also isolated the impact of the sound wave. The Holy Spirit sword appeared in Long Houchen's right hand. Spiritual power instantly surged, and the Holy Spirit sword was covered in a layer of golden light. This golden light also vibrated rapidly according to the frequency of the light ripple. Long Houchen could clearly feel that the consumption of spiritual power when he used the light ripple was twice as much as usual. However, the defense of the holy light barrier had more than doubled, and was even somewhat close to the level of an elemental shield. The most important thing about using the light ripple to release the holy light barrier was that it was confusing and cost-effective. Although the consumption of spiritual power had doubled, Its power was comparable to that of a level 5 spell. More importantly, the casting time was still the same as the time when the holy light barrier was used. Gently waving the Holy Spirit sword in his hand, Long Houchen instantly felt a series of soft, buzzing sounds emitting from the sword. The sound was not loud, but strangely, it maintained the same frequency as the shrill howl outside. With the protection of the holy light barrier, the shrill howl had no effect on Long Houchen. He took a step to the side and arrived in front of the stone wall. The Holy Spirit's sword in his hand directly pierced the stone wall. Immediately, a scene that shocked Long Houchen appeared. The Holy Spirit's sword, which was only a magical weapon, easily pierced the stone wall like a hot knife piercing butter. There was not even a strong sound of friction. Long Houchen was very clear about his own strength and the situation of the Holy Spirit's sword. Because of this, the shock in his heart was even more intense. He could clearly feel that under the high-frequency vibration of the Holy Spirit's sword, the stone wall seemed to have melted when it pierced into it. This feeling was very strange. It could be said that because of the existence of the light ripple, the power of the Holy Spirit's sword was at least 10 times stronger than under normal circumstances. And this was under the condition that no skills were used. This degree of increase was far greater than the increase in spiritual power consumption. Although Long Houchen knew that if he used skills, the light ripple wouldn't have such a large increase, it was definitely not a problem for it to increase the power of all attack skills by 1 level. Think about it, with the same Holy Sword skill, could a 6th level Holy Sword and a 5th level Holy Sword be the same? Under normal circumstances, the spiritual power consumption of a 6th level Holy Sword was at least 3 to 5 times that of a 5th level Holy Sword. However, the light ripple only needed to double Long Houchen's spiritual power. Moreover, a 5th level Holy Sword could display the power of a 6th level Holy Sword, and it was extremely hidden. The casting time was also only that of a 5th level Holy Sword. This was Long Houchen's first self-created skill, but there was no doubt that the potential of this skill was too great for him. The light elemental spirit Yiting flew out from Long Houchen's chest, looking at Long Houchen with a pleasantly surprised expression, her small mouth emitting some strange sounds. As Long Houchen's contracted spirit, she could learn all the light elemental skills that Long Houchen could use. Very clearly, she also felt the huge effect of the light ripple skill. Releasing a mana-gathering halo, it helped Long Houchen recover the spiritual power he had consumed. Yiting excitedly flew around Long Houchen. She felt very fortunate to have such a master. For elemental spirits, their greatest desire was to continuously evolve and increase their own strength. And after having a human master, their evolution was closely related to their master's increase in strength. If one day Yiting's cultivation could increase to a certain level and she could evolve into a spirit king, she could even cultivate a physical body. At that time, the high elves, which had been extinct for nearly 10,000 years, would reappear. It must be known that although elemental spirits were rare in the Holy Demon Continent, they still existed. However, in the past 10,000 years, not a single one had been able to evolve to the level of a high elf. And at this moment, Yiting clearly felt this hope from Long Houchen. As Long Houchen cultivated, the whistling sound gradually faded and disappeared without a trace. With the understanding of the light ripple, Long Houchen's confidence was greatly boosted. He retreated to the entrance of the cave, turned on the gem that could record images, and re-entered the cave. This time, he did not stop and directly jumped into the crack. At the same time, he released his blue rain and hibiscus of light from his body. The position that Long Houchen chose to jump down was already decided. He jumped down close to the rock wall. After about 10 meters, the first landing point was already in front of him. He gathered his spiritual power and tried to lighten his body as much as possible. Long Houchen landed lightly on it. After the tip of his toes touched the ground to offset the momentum, he slashed down with a light slash sword. This was for illumination. he followed the sword and continued to sweep down. Yiting flew by Long Houchen's side, helping him illuminate the surroundings while continuing to chant the spirit-gathering halo incantation, helping Long Houchen recover his spiritual power. What made Long Houchen somewhat surprised was that within this dreadful howling cavern, the amount of light elements was unexpectedly pitifully small. Even with his child of light physique, and the twice-evolved light elemental fairy Yiting, the amount of light elements he could gather was pitifully small. Not even a third of the usual amount. Fortunately, his current consumption wasn't that great. Moreover, with the saint's spiritual stove's nurturing effect, he could also nurture new light elements from his own spiritual power. As he swept down, Long Houchen was very careful. In addition to using his eyes to observe, he also carefully felt everything around him. The further down he went, the more intense the malevolent spiritual power aura became. Within the malevolence, there was also a bit of deathly stillness. Different from Kai Er's murderous aura, this deathly aura seemed to be emitted by the true aura of death. Moreover, this malevolent spiritual power aura was something that Long Houchen had never felt before. It was unknown how deep this crevice was, but Long Houchen's speed couldn't be said to be slow. After descending for no less than half an hour, when the next wave of shrill howls resounded, he still couldn't see the end of this abyss. The surroundings were pitch black, and the dense deathly aura made Long Houchen, who was of the light attribute, feel extremely uncomfortable. If it weren't for the illumination of the light elemental fairy Yiting, in addition to the light-severing sword that he would occasionally use, the surroundings would be a pitch-black scene. As he descended, Long Houchen once again saw the corpses of several great fiends hanging on the craggy rocks. It was very obvious that these great fiends had also fallen under the influence of the shrill howls as they explored the depths. Even Long Houchen, who was at the fifth step and had comprehended ripple of light, was starting to feel a little strenuous descending to this point, let alone these fourth-step great fiends. Even if the great fiend cavalrymen weren't killed, they probably wouldn't be able to do much here. The recovery rate of spiritual power was already far from being able to keep up with his own consumption. Amidst the shrill howls, Long Houchen had no choice but to find a slightly flat place to sit down and recuperate. At the same time, he also felt the connection between himself and Haoyue. This was the most important thing. As long as the blood contract wasn't disturbed by this place, he could continue to explore without any worries. According to Long Houchen's estimation, he had already penetrated at least 2 kilometers in the previous hour. Excluding the height of the mountainside outside, he could now be considered to be deep underground. Moreover, he discovered that the deeper he went, the wider the cracks in the rocks became. This deep and serene cave was like a bottomless pit. The shrill howls clearly became more intense here. The frequency fluctuations of the sound were much stronger than the outside. Because he had comprehended the mystery of ripple of light, Long Houchen carefully felt that the power of the shrill howls had increased, and the frequency of the sound oscillations had also increased. He tried to increase the frequency of the spiritual power oscillations that he released from the holy light barrier. He immediately felt that continuing to increase the speed of the spiritual power oscillations not only greatly increased his consumption of spiritual power, but also became more and more difficult to increase the frequency. This was obviously due to the fact that his cultivation was not enough. Even without experimenting, Long Houchen could be sure that the higher the frequency, the stronger the attack power of the ripple of light would become. In other words, this skill would improve with the improvement of his cultivation. His current mentality was very good. This time entering the territory of the demons, they had already gained a lot. Even if this exploration mission could not be completed in the end, there was no loss. Once they found that the danger below was something that he and the 2 monster hunters couldn't deal with, they could just retreat. Safety first. Moreover, with the gem that could record images, it was enough to explain the danger to his companions. While trying to gain a deeper understanding of the ripple of light, Long Houchen resisted the threat of the shrill howls. His spiritual power had already been consumed by nearly half. He was completely certain that without a cultivation of the fifth step or above, it was simply impossible to reach his current position. As for continuing down, that was even more difficult to say. It would be best if one had a cultivation of the sixth step and could rely on spiritual power to fly. That way, the speed of descending would greatly increase, and with the assistance of the spiritual aperture that could only be opened at the sixth step, it would be much easier to deal with it. After the shrill howls had passed, Long Houchen transmitted the news that he was safe and sound to Haoyue. He didn't act blindly without thinking and continued to sit there, working hard to restore his spiritual power in this place where the light element was extremely thin. In this deep cave with unknown dangers, naturally the more careful the better. It was especially important to maintain the best condition at all times. Moreover, Long Houchen also discovered that because of the thinness of the light element here, the saint's spiritual stove unexpectedly began to slowly revolve under his incessant urging, as if some new ability had been developed. Long Houchen possessed the constitution of the Son of Light. In any place in the outside world that contained the light element, no matter how much he cultivated, the light element was inexhaustible. This was the first time he cultivated in this kind of place where the light element was extremely thin. The spiritual power within his body constantly revolved, and the center of the spiritual power was the saint's spiritual stove. If Long Houchen's cultivation was strong enough, then he could gradually comprehend the mysteries of the spiritual aperture during this revolving process, but it was clear that his current cultivation was still insufficient. However, the saint's spiritual stove's own rotation already gave him a somewhat strange feeling. The saint's spiritual stove's ability to nurture was also in the process of being further developed. When spiritual power passed through the saint's spiritual stove, it was like entering another body. When it overflowed again, it would become a bit larger. This was currently the only way for Long Houchen to recover his spiritual power. There was no light element in the outside world that could be absorbed, so Yiting's current role was to help Long Houchen precisely control the light element within his body. With her existence, Long Houchen didn't need to worry about qi deviation. He only needed to use his thoughts to fully mobilize his spiritual power. Gradually, Long Houchen entered a strange cultivation state. He unexpectedly entered a meditative state in this deep, pitch-black cave. To be able to be so focused in such an environment, it was clear how pure his heart was. The original saint's spiritual stove was only like a container, quietly helping Long Houchen nurture the liquid spiritual power. But now, as it continuously revolved, it naturally changed from a container to a core. The small three-legged cauldron that was previously used to nourish spiritual power had now become the true core. The liquid spiritual power scattered outside of the spiritual stove accompanied its own rotation, gradually shrinking into the spiritual stove. The highly concentrated liquid spiritual power even made Long Houchen's heart palpitate. What Long Houchen was doing now was to calm his mind as much as possible. At the same time, he concentrated his thoughts on the saint's spiritual stove, feeling how the saint's spiritual stove changed under his special meditation state where he couldn't absorb the light element. His method was clearly very clever. His experience came from the process of the saint's spiritual stove producing liquid spiritual power. His powerful spiritual power allowed him to deeply feel the majority of the changes within the saint's spiritual stove. He discovered that the liquid spiritual power entering the spiritual stove was actually undergoing a splitting and compressing process. Simply put, it was a drop of liquid spiritual power splitting into two drops inside the spiritual stove, and then slowing down. The growth of spiritual power could only be achieved by absorbing energy from the outside world. Although it was only to restore Long Houchen's own spiritual power under normal circumstances, he still needed to absorb the light element from the outside world. But now, where did the energy that the saint's spiritual stove was absorbing come from? How did it give birth to a new light element? Opportunities were always given to those who were prepared. Very quickly, Long Houchen discovered where the mysteries lay. The source of the spiritual power state was actually the energy of other attributes within this deep cave. This is Long Houchen's heart violently shook. His mind seemed to instantly recall the words that his father once told him. For any profession, starting from the fifth step, every stage is a huge dividing line. The difference between the fourth step and the fifth step lies in the liquid spiritual power, and the difference between the fifth step and the sixth step lies in the spiritual aperture. Only when a profession has a spiritual aperture can they truly be called a strong person. This is because the spiritual aperture can help them have a stronger survival and combat ability under any circumstances. For Long Houchen, from the start of his cultivation until now, the two people who had the most influence on him were naturally Long Xingwu and Yi Hua. Before the fifth step, disregarding the saint's spiritual stove that Long Xingwu gave him, Yi Hua's help to Long Houchen was actually even greater than Long Xingwu's father. Because of Yi Hua's innate talent, he wholeheartedly threw himself into the research of low-level cultivation. It could be said that what he passed on to Long Houchen was a path without any twists and turns. Therefore, Long Houchen was able to grow so quickly. Regarding the comprehension of low-level skills, positioning on the battlefield, and his own cultivation, he had an understanding that surpassed that of ordinary people. However, Yi Hua, after all, had his limitations. In the end, he was only an Earth Knight. After improving his innate talent, he had only recently broken through to the Radiance Knight rank. How could his vision be compared to that of Long Xingwu, who was a Knight of the Seal? What Long Xingwu passed on to Long Houchen were the most direct experiences that he had experienced. It wasn't as detailed as Yi Hua's, but it gave Long Houchen a complete outline of cultivation from low level to high level. The spiritual aperture has two major functions. One is that it can greatly increase the recovery speed of spiritual power. As long as the spiritual aperture exists, there is no need to deliberately meditate. Even when breathing, one's spiritual power will gradually recover. It can greatly increase the profession's endurance in combat. This is also the most important function of the spiritual aperture. However, the other function of the spiritual aperture can't be neglected. It allows the profession to have the ability to transform other types of energy into their own attribute energy in any environment. With this second function, it can allow the profession to maintain combat power in any environment. It can greatly increase the survivability on the battlefield. Long Xingwu's words could be said to have been memorized by Long Houchen without missing a single word. And the situation before his eyes was clearly telling him that the saint's spiritual stove had temporarily given him the second function of the spiritual aperture in this vile environment. Although compared to the first function, the second function was a bit weaker, but in the current situation it was even more important to Long Houchen. As his spiritual power gradually recovered, Long Houchen became even more focused. This kind of opportunity was really too rare. He was very clear that the difficulty of condensing the spiritual aperture was far greater than the difficulty of cultivating liquid spiritual power. The opportunity that the saint's spiritual stove gave him was really too good. If he could comprehend a bit more at this time, when he truly condensed the spiritual aperture in the near future, the bottleneck would be greatly reduced. Moreover, the current change of the saint's spiritual stove seemed to be related to its second evolution. Qualitative changes often lead to a chain reaction. There was another reason why Long Houchen was so focused, and that was because Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, and Yiting the Light Elemental were also resting inside the saint's spiritual stove. They were also greatly benefiting from the saint's spiritual stove's current state. For a practitioner, this kind of opportunity was really too rare, so much so that Long Houchen sat here for an entire 4 hours. After experiencing the consumption of fierce howl several times, and then the process of spiritual power recovery, he no longer needed to deliberately meditate and cultivate to support the consumption of the saint's spiritual stove. Only when the energy conversion of the saint's spiritual stove had become smooth, did he wake up from his meditative state. Somewhat regretfully standing up, Long Houchen immediately sent a message to Haoyue that he was safe. If he was alone, then he would even continue sitting here. There were many ways to consume spiritual power, and with such a rare opportunity to cultivate, if it was someone else, it would be very difficult to summon the courage to give it up. However, Long Houchen couldn't. He still had his companions waiting outside, and it wasn't safe in the demon's territory. He couldn't stay here for a long time. On the first day when Yi Hua taught the guardian knight the skill, he said to him, "Responsibility is the 11th rule of the guardian knight." Chapter 80. Sensing that his body was filled with spiritual energy and had even improved, Long Houchen leapt up once again and continued his rapid descent. The darkness and coldness could easily make people cowardly. However, under the illumination of his own light, Long Houchen seemed especially steady. This time, his descent did not last too long. After another quarter of an hour, a layer of gray luster caught his attention. He could finally see the bottom of the cave. The wide crack suddenly narrowed. When Long Houchen's feet touched the ground, he could faintly see a gray light in front of him. Even though the gray light was very weak, it was still as eye-catching as a lighthouse in this pitch-black cave. With his shield in his left hand and his sword in his right, Long Houchen carefully cast the radiant shield on himself again with the radiant light ripple, before walking in the direction of the gray light. Oh, 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 oh. Soft whistling sounds constantly rang out, as if they were rehearsals for the howls in the Cave of Terror. After advancing for around 300 meters, the gray light became particularly obvious. After turning a corner, the gray light suddenly became more intense. The sudden grayish-white even caused Long Houchen's vision to become slightly unaccustomed. However, in the next moment, his beautiful golden eyes could not help but be filled with shock. He almost subconsciously took a step back and raised his shield, assuming the standard defensive posture of a guardian knight. This scene was just too shocking. No matter how many conjectures Long Houchen had about the Wailing Howl Cave, all of them turned into floating clouds when he got close to the reality. Several hundred meters in front of him was an extremely spacious space. A huge, cone-shaped cave could be seen there in its entirety. The walls of the cave were as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the faint gray light. It gave off a dreamlike, unreal feeling despite the deathly stillness. The entire cave was over 150 meters tall. Long Houchen, who had appeared at the entrance of the crack, was like an insignificant insect compared to the huge cave. This was not the most shocking thing. What made Long Houchen even more incredulous was that he actually saw a tower at a depth of at least 3,000 meters underground. That's right, it was a pagoda, a 7-story pagoda that was over 100 meters tall. It had a simple and unadorned design. It had 7 stories, 4 sides and 8 sides. It was a grayish-white pagoda that was filled with deathly stillness and terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations. This tower was right in the middle of the conical cavern, occupying most of the area of the entire cavern. Layers of gray halos continued to spread out from the tower, and the powerful spiritual fluctuations made Long Houchen, the son of the light, tremble from the bottom of his heart. It was a terrifyingly powerful existence. This was his first impression and judgment of this tower. Around the tower were countless grayish-white lights. They were like moths darting into a flame, constantly rushing toward the tower, and densely attached to the grayish-white energy outer layer emitted by the tower. At this moment, suddenly, a shrill howl erupted without warning, and the grayish-white energy attached to the tower also went berserk, scattering in all directions. The terrifying sound waves were at least 3 times stronger than the last time Long Houchen heard them, to the point that the holy light barrier around his body instantly collapsed, forcing him to release another holy light barrier in the shortest time possible, and to increase the frequency of the holy light barrier with all his might. Even so, the holy light barrier that Long Houchen released still collapsed at an alarming rate. Fortunately, the holy light barrier was only a Tier 3 spell, and Long Houchen released it one after another, which was why he was barely able to withstand the terrifying howl. Fear involuntarily appeared on his face because he discovered that the balls of grayish-white light were filled with powerful soul fluctuations, and the terrifying howls were actually the howls of their souls. What kind of existence was this? What exactly was this tower? Although Long Houchen's heart was filled with questions, he dared not think too much at this moment, and could only focus on resisting the terrifying howl that he had never felt before. Long Houchen could conclude that if he had not comprehended the holy light barrier, he would not have been able to withstand it for even a minute, and would have been torn apart by the terrifying sound waves. In order to withstand this howl, under normal circumstances, one would probably need a Tier 7 cultivation base to be able to do so. This time, the howl seemed especially long to Long Houchen, and when it finally stopped, Long Houchen was shocked to find that more than half of his spiritual energy had disappeared. As the leader of the monster hunters, Long Houchen's first judgment was that this mission was not something that the two monster hunters could complete. Exploring the Terror Howl Cave naturally included exploring the interior of this mysterious tower. But, with their cultivation base, could they explore the interior? To be able to build such a tower deep underground, what kind of existence could do it? Even if it was not as powerful as the Demon Emperor, it had to be at least a Tier 9 powerhouse. He absolutely could not let his companions come here. Among the other 12, he was afraid that apart from Kair, who might be able to withstand the howl, the others would absolutely not be able to survive in this kind of terrifying sound waves. Retreat like this? Long Houchen was really unwilling. After coming here with great difficulty, was he going to retreat just like this? No matter what, he had to go into this tower and take a look. Taking a deep breath, Long Houchen mobilized the saint's spiritual stove to recover his spiritual energy, and at the same time, he felt the blood contract connection between him and Haoyue. The connection was still close, no problem at all. Yes, even when Haoyue was in another plane, he could still contact him through the blood contract, and now it was only a matter of distance. When Long Houchen raised his head to look at the tower again, he discovered that the soul energy floating in the conical cave was completely scattered throughout the space, and was slowly approaching the tower. From the looks of it, they would eventually stick to the tower, just like before. Then, the howl would once again appear. This process was constantly repeating itself. Probing, Long Houchen took a few steps forward. He was completely unable to determine whether or not these floating ash-gray souls would harm him, so he had to be careful. What made him somewhat despair was that the answer was yes. When Long Houchen had just taken his first step into the conical cave, the dozen or so soul energy nearby discovered his existence, and without the slightest hesitation, madly pounced towards him. As the distance closed, Long Houchen could clearly see that each and every one of those ash-gray soul energy unexpectedly had a malevolent face. Although they were condensed from soul energy, they appeared even more malevolent. The first group of wraiths fiercely collided with Long Houchen's holy light cover. Long Houchen had already prepared to deal with it. Soul energy was also a form of energy, and these wraiths brimming with the aura of death should be restrained by his own light attribute, so he wasn't too worried. However, the moment the wraiths truly collided with the holy light cover, Long Houchen was gobsmacked. Boom! The holy light cover instantly exploded, and Long Houchen only felt as if his brain had been smashed by a heavy hammer. A terrifying energy brimming with death and coldness directly drilled into the depths of his soul, as if it was actually trying to seize his body. The evil, icy soul energy was abnormally strong, to the point that Long Houchen's mind momentarily blanked out under its impact. Even the light elemental spirit Yiting was actually suppressed within Long Houchen's body. Facing these powerful wraiths, she could only tremble. His mind was completely blank, and Long Houchen couldn't even communicate with Hao Yue's ability to teleport. The power of these wraiths was simply too terrifying. It was only one of the hundreds and thousands of wraiths, but it was this seemingly inconspicuous little wraiths that caused Long Houchen to not even have the chance to escape. At this extremely critical juncture, a purple glow suddenly appeared in Long Houchen's eyes, and the 9 purple runes of light on his forehead appeared once more. A hazy purple halo rippled out from Long Houchen's body. Whether it was the wraiths that had first collided with Long Houchen or the dozen or so other wraiths that followed, under the impact of this purple glow, all of them let out shrill screams and flew away as if they were fleeing. The purple light projected in front of Long Houchen, and Hao Yue's enormous body appeared, shielding Long Houchen behind it. A rich purple glow continuously spread from its body, and little light, little fire, and little blue's 3 heads and 6 eyes all turned purple. The wraiths that had been so powerful that Long Houchen couldn't resist at all seemed to be extremely afraid of the purple halo released by Hao Yue. With a series of sharp screams, they all fled as fast as they could, and even the wraiths that were slightly further away didn't dare to rush forward. This was not the first time that Hao Yue had released this purple glow. Long Houchen had seen it, but only this time did he feel it the most clearly. The power of the soul, that was the power that belonged to Hao Yue's soul. Seeing that the wraiths didn't dare to come forward, Long Houchen couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. In that moment, he really felt as if his body was about to be stripped away. Hao Yue and Long Houchen were telepathically connected. With its guidance, Long Houchen's figure flashed and he landed on Hao Yue's back. Being together with it, Long Houchen immediately felt at ease. Hao Yue, let's go back. Long Houchen reluctantly looked at the huge grayish-white tower. Hao Yue's 3 heads turned to look at Long Houchen. To Long Houchen's surprise, their purple eyes were actually flashing with excitement. The 3 heads shook at Long Houchen at the same time. Hao Yue's thoughts were transmitted, telling Long Houchen that there wouldn't be any danger here for the time being. Although there would be danger inside the tower, it wouldn't erupt directly. They could still deal with it for the time being. It suggested that Long Houchen enter the first floor of the tower to take a look. Long Houchen was originally a little unwilling, but Hao Yue's suggestion immediately reignited his hope. At least from the current situation, Hao Yue could restrain the wraiths outside the tower. It shouldn't be too dangerous to just take a look at the situation inside the tower, right? Alright, then let's go and take a look. Roar, roar, roar. 3 angry roars came from Hao Yue's 3 heads at the same time. Its 4 hooves were moving, and its thick body carried Long Houchen straight towards the tower. Under the deterrence of the purple soul radiance released by Hao Yue, a large number of wraiths that were scattered in the air quickly dispersed. None of them dared to come into contact with it. Hao Yue held its head high, and it seemed to have a domineering aura. The distance of a few hundred meters was covered by Hao Yue in the blink of an eye. Long Houchen couldn't see the main entrance of the tower from where he was previously at the crack. They went around to the side, and a 3-meter-tall door appeared in front of them. The first feeling that came to Long Houchen when he saw the door was that this tower was built by humans. The door was grayish-white in color, and there weren't any gorgeous carvings or patterns. This alone didn't match the ruins of the High Elves. Moreover, there was a thick stone slab above the door. There were 5 ancient words on it. These words were very similar to the words used by humans now, but the structure of the words was more complicated. Long Houchen could vaguely make out the words written on it: eternal sleep. Although the door was very simple and not tall, it gave off a majestic aura when standing in front of it. It was as if there was a towering mountain standing proudly. Hao Yue's 3 heads and 6 eyes shone with a dazzling brilliance. It moved to the side, but it didn't go straight towards the door. Instead, it ran to the side of the door and spat out a whirlwind that swept towards the door. The moment it spat out the green light, Haoyue suddenly moved horizontally and stuck close to the side of the tower, completely avoiding the front of the door. Puff! The opening of the door wasn't difficult at all. On the contrary, it opened quietly under the push of the wind element. However, as soon as it was opened, a dense black-gray air current swept out from the tower. It was an extremely pure energy, but it was an energy that no living creature would want to come into contact with because it was filled with the purity of the aura of death. The vengeful spirits that were gradually approaching the tower seemed to have discovered the most terrifying thing. They frantically fled in all directions, and a shrill howl that shouldn't have appeared at this time suddenly erupted. Long Haochen hurriedly released a holy light shield to cover himself and Haoyue, and resisted the terrifying sound waves brought by the shrill howl with all his might. After the grayish-black air current surged out of the tower, it quickly spread in the air. As soon as dozens of vengeful spirits that were closer to the tower came into contact with it, they immediately turned into a grayish-white air current and surged towards the tower, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Clearly, the pure aura of death couldn't resist the vengeful spirits at all. On the other hand, the aura of the tower itself was irresistible to them. Just as Long Haochen's brain was working quickly to determine the situation around him, Haoyue had already moved again. In a flash, he had entered the tower. A strange scene appeared. As soon as Haoyue stepped into the tower, the shrill howl outside stopped abruptly, and could no longer affect Long Haochen. However, what followed was an indescribable silence that could be felt from every pore on Long Haochen's body. A spacious hall appeared in front of him. It wasn't as dark as he had imagined, but was completely grayish-white. Moreover, it was much wider than the tower that he had seen from the outside. All 48 pillars supported the dome that was close to 30 meters tall. All the grayish-white was slightly distorted, so much so that Long Haochen couldn't see the actual situation inside. The 48 pillars stood proudly on both sides of the hall, but he couldn't see what was inside. The purple spiritual aura on Haoyue's body was quickly withdrawn. He appeared very cautious as he slowly walked forward. Long Haochen's palms were sweating as he held the Holy Spirit sword and shield. After entering this world that was filled with the aura of death, he felt a great change in his body. Firstly, the recovery speed of his spiritual power was actually a few times faster than when he was outside the tower. This meant that the elemental energy in this tower was much more abundant than the outside world. At the same time, the light elemental spirit Yiting didn't dare to appear outside of Long Haochen's body again, as if there was something extremely terrifying here. Welcome to the Tower of Eternity. Just as Long Haochen was determining the situation inside the tower, an old voice suddenly sounded without warning. Long Haochen instantly shivered, and Haoyue also stopped in his tracks. The voice came from all directions. Being able to enter the Tower of Eternity, where I sleep, proves that you are an excellent necromancer, and your strength should have reached at least the 6th level. Child, you are very lucky to be able to come to the world that belongs to us necromancers. The Tower of Eternity is the crystallization of my 1,000 years of life. As long as you move forward, pass all the tests, and finally reach the top, you will completely inherit my mantle. The necromancers will reappear in the world, and let those hypocrites of the glorious church rest in death. Move forward bravely, my child. You are the first necromancer to enter the Tower of Eternity, and you will also be my only successor. What you will face are dangers and tests, but there will be no threat to your life. Of course, this is based on the premise that you can pass the first test, otherwise, you are not qualified to inherit my mantle. As long as you can pass the test, this path will always be open for you. I will also always protect you by your side, until the moment you truly appear in front of me. What you're hearing now is my final words before my eternal rest. When you leave this place, the Tower of Eternity will close because of you, and will automatically be transported to the independent plane that I have opened. Only you, who have my token, can enter. I will be at the top of the tower, waiting for your arrival, to receive the inheritance of the holy law of necromancy, sleeping calamity Electrolux. Outside the cave of fear howl. Staring at the place where Haoyue disappeared, the two members of the monster hunters couldn't help but panic. Lin Xian said in surprise, "Why is it not Haochen who returned, but Haoyue who disappeared?" Her words also asked the question in everyone's mind. Ever since entering the territory of the demons, Long Haochen was the backbone of the entire team. When he was around, the group didn't feel particularly strong, but the moment Haoyue disappeared, the young elites of the Temple League began to panic. Lin Xian frowned. Haochen said that he can teleport back to Haoyue's side when he is in danger, but now it is Haoyue who teleported over. There is only one explanation: he is in danger, and it is a danger that doesn't even have the opportunity to teleport. No, we have to immediately support the leader. As he spoke, he was about to walk out of the cavern. Not only him, but Wang Yuan, Sima Xian, and the others also had the same reaction. But at this moment, a figure blocked the exit of the cavern that they had temporarily opened. "Don't panic, no one is allowed to go out." Kai Er's cold voice sounded, causing everyone to be stunned. If it was another person who made such a move, I am afraid that they would first be besieged by the members of the 21st General Level Monster Hunters, but this person is Kai which is completely different. Who is Kai? She is Long Haochen's confidant. Long Haochen is in danger, how can she not be anxious? Kai calmly looked at the anxious people, and said in a deep voice, "From now on, I will temporarily take over the position of Leader Haochen. Before he comes back, all actions will be under my command. Who has any objections?" Lu Shi said in a deep voice, "Kai now is not a question of who is in command, but Haochen's safety. Shouldn't we go and rescue him?" Along the way, he was truly convinced by Long Haochen. And he is also very clear that if there is one person in the team who can lead everyone back safely, then this person can naturally be Long Haochen. Kai coldly glanced at him. "I am not panicking, why are you panicking? There is a blood contract between Haochen and Haoyue, this contract makes them as one. Even if Haochen loses the ability to teleport back, once he feels that he is in danger, Haoyue can forcibly teleport him back. But Haoyue did not do so, but instead took the initiative to teleport to his side. What does this mean? It means that Haoyue believes that the danger Haochen is in is within its control, and it can help Haoyue resolve the danger. What's more, Haochen has already been gone for a few hours, and the whistling sound just now suddenly became irregular. This means that he has reached the core position of this fearful howling cave. He took so long to arrive, how long will it take for us to get to his side? If something happens to us on the way, when he comes back, won't he be even more anxious? What we need to do now is to eliminate all of his worries, and not to throw him into confusion. So, continue to rest here and wait for him to come back. Since he is our leader, we must have absolute trust in him. I believe that he will be able to return safely." It can be said that Kai Er's words immediately calmed the entire team down. All along, Long Haochen has been the leader of the entire team, the team's core, and also the team's brain. At this moment, in the absence of him, Kai who understands him the most, stood up. Compared to Long Haochen, she is more dignified, more unquestionable. However, her cold voice gave people a feeling that it is a matter of course. As the possessors of top-notch innate gifts, whether it was Long Haochen or Kai they both had an innate ability to dominate others. It was just that Kai had always been willing to serve as Long Haochen's foil. Lu Shi's gaze suddenly fell on Sima Xian, his eyes revealing sincere envy. At this moment, there is only one thought in his mind: how good would it be if he could be the priest of this dual-core monster hunters? Necromancer? When hearing these words, Long Haochen's heart was incomparably shocked. This profession has probably not appeared in the Holy Demon continent for tens of thousands of years. At the same time, these words also evoked his memories. It is a soul-stirring story told by his father. 13,000 years ago, humans entered the glorious era from the ancient times and ushered in a period of rapid development for 7,000 years. It is precisely these 7,000 years that established the ruling position of humans in the Holy Demon continent. At that time, humans have 3 countries, each of which is incomparably powerful, even surpassing the current Temple League, with countless powerhouses. However, why after 700 years, when the 72 demon pillars descended, humans lacked the ability to resist, almost being exterminated by the demons, and entered the Dark Age? Long Xingwu told Long Haochen that it is because of a catastrophe during the Glorious Era. And the main culprit of that catastrophe is the necromancer. This catastrophe caused great damage to the vitality of the 3 human empires, and even caused the inheritance of countless powerhouses to be severed. This caused the human resistance to be greatly weakened after the demon god descended, and finally after retreating to the current Temple League, they gradually stabilized. It has been nearly 10,000 years since that catastrophe. The necromancer is a profession that deals with death. They are not dark mages, they obtain powerful abilities through communicating with the undead. At that time, apart from the royal families of the 3 empires, the most important one in the human world was the brilliant Vatican mentioned in the voice just now. The 3 empires ruled over humans, while the brilliant Vatican ruled over the powerhouses. It can be said that most of the powerhouses were under the rule of the brilliant Vatican, and even the name of the brilliant era came from the brilliant Vatican. One can imagine how powerful the brilliant Vatican was at that time. No one knows how the war between the necromancer and the brilliant Vatican started. But even now, after 10,000 years, the tragedy of that war left a deep impression. It can be said that the strength that the necromancer displayed at that time is not weaker than the 72 demon god pillars. However, humans at that time are far from being comparable to the current humans. In the end, humans obtained victory, exterminating the necromancer to the point that after 10,000 years, there is no news of the necromancer appearing again. However, humans also paid an extremely heavy price. The Pope of the brilliant Vatican fell in the end, and even his inheritance was broken. More than 90% of the powerhouses of the brilliant Vatican perished in that holy war. The last war was between the Pope of the brilliant Vatican and the leader of the necromancers. In that war, they even opened up a dimensional battlefield to prevent the human world from collapsing completely. No one knows the final outcome, but after that war, the Pope and the leader of the necromancers never appeared again. Without a leader, the remaining necromancers lost the holy war in the end. However, the disaster that they brought to humans was that the human population was reduced by half, countless powerhouses perished, and the inheritance of the brilliant era was broken. From then on, humans entered the late period of their brilliant era, until the Dark Age descended. It can be said that without the disaster brought by the necromancers, when the 72 demon god pillars descended, they may not have been able to gain a foothold in the Holy Demon continent. If the brilliant Vatican still had the strength, how could the demons become so powerful? Unfortunately, no if can change the truth. The glory of humans eventually declined because of the necromancers and the 72 demon god pillars. However, human civilization still fought tenaciously. At least for now, it was not easy for the 72 demon god pillars to completely destroy the Temple League. After nearly 10,000 years of decline, humans finally rose gradually. The Son of the Light, Long Haochen, and the Saint of Reincarnation, Kair, were the humans who came into being. Long Haochen gradually woke up from his memories, but his golden eyes were still filled with shock. This tower was actually a civilization left behind by the necromancers. How shocking was this news! Back then, after the glorious church obtained the final victory in the Holy War, they set off a wave of destruction across the entire continent. It lasted for hundreds of years. All the inheritance, information, and records of the necromancers were completely erased in the process. As a result, there were only a few people who knew the title of necromancers. The Holy Law of Necromancers, Eternal Sleep Calamity Electrolux. What a terrifying and domineering name. Long Houchen was almost sure that the owner of the Eternal Sleep Tower must have played an important role in the Holy War. Even if he was not the leader of the necromancers who perished together with the leader of the brilliant Vatican, he must have been one of the commanders. Who would have thought that the inheritance of such a powerful necromancer would be preserved? If this news were to spread to the Temple League, it might cause a panic. Calm down, I must calm down now. Long Houchen constantly warned himself, gradually calming his surging emotions. His memory was very good, especially when he was nervous, and his memory would double. The voice from before was firmly remembered in his mind. Now that he thought about it carefully, he suddenly realized many things from the voice that was preserved here. First of all, this tower should be a remnant of the glorious era 10,000 years ago, and it could be said to be the crystallization of the necromancer's wisdom of that era. After the necromancers lost the Holy War, this eternal sleep tower was buried deep underground, and no one had ever discovered it. It was only when the Earth's crust shifted and a crack connected to the outside world appeared that Long Houchen found this place. After 10,000 years, not only did this tower not suffer any damage, but it also maintained a strong death energy. The vengeful spirits outside were obviously left here by the owner of this tower using special methods. And in the owner's opinion, only the necromancer could pass through these vengeful spirits, and finally inherit his legacy. And how Yue's existence used his strong soul aura to intimidate the vengeful spirits and brought him here. All of this could be described as a freak combination of factors. As the Son of Light, of course, Long Houchen could not inherit the necromancer's legacy. However, when the voice sounded, the door behind him had already closed. With the owner's wisdom and strength, it was obviously impossible for him to break through the door. So, in order to leave this place alive, Long Houchen had to pass the first level test and obtain the token of Eternal Sleep Disaster Electrolux. Moreover, from the words left behind by Eternal Sleep Disaster Electrolux, it was not difficult to find out that this powerful necromancer believed that only necromancers who had reached the 6th level could come here. In other words, the first level of the tower's test was prepared for the 6th level necromancers. After thinking through these key points, Long Houchen couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. There was no doubt that the first level's test was not simple. To him, whether he could leave this place alive was still an unknown. Now, he could only fight with all his might to get out of this place. Just as he was thinking about how to face the unknown danger in front of him, Eternal Sleep Disaster Electrolux's voice sounded again. This time, it made Long Houchen feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Then, let me test your attributes to see what kind of necromancer you are. Test attributes? Oh no. Long Houchen's mind instantly went blank. In his mind, necromancers should be the extension of darkness. No matter which attribute it was definitely not light. My attributes are about to be exposed. With the power of Eternal Sleep Disaster, what will I face? Haoyue, break through the door. Long Houchen instantly issued an order to Haoyue in his mind. Although the chance of returning the way they came was slim, perhaps this was the only way to survive. However, just as Long Houchen issued this order, Haoyue's body suddenly shook violently. The unprepared Long Houchen was suddenly thrown into the air, and Haoyue himself quickly retreated a few steps, avoiding his original position. Haoyue actually gave up on me? Impossible. Long Houchen's entire person was in a state of incomprehensible shock. It was also at this time, a grayish-white light fell from the sky, accurately enveloping his body. The grayish-white light was filled with an irresistible and terrifying aura. Long Houchen only felt his whole body go cold. The indescribable aura of death instantly made the blood in his body feel like it was about to freeze. All the liquid light attribute spiritual power was completely suppressed back into the saint's spiritual stove. He couldn't even move his little finger. Despair, this kind of emotion appeared in Long Houchen's heart for the first time. Even when he was facing the three great demon gods, he still had the courage to resist, but now he couldn't do anything. Am I really going to stay here forever? Become a part of those vengeful spirits? Under the illumination of the grayish-white light, Long Houchen slowly fell back from the position that Haoyue had shaken him, once again landing on the ground with his feet firmly planted on the ground. What gave him a glimmer of hope was that the attack he had imagined did not come. The white light and the feeling it gave Long Houchen disappeared just like that. Is this true? Will my message really be activated? If it really is like this, then I really am too happy. It seems that the hateful heavens haven't completely abandoned me. My dear disciple, I think I can already call you like this. I will absolutely not allow you to fall before becoming my successor. Because you are my most ideal disciple, a holy necromancer with the same light attribute as me. Haha, this will be a perfect inheritance. God's favor, it's actually the light of God's favor, haha. Chapter 81. What? Long Houchen cried out in alarm. His entire consciousness had unexpectedly sunk into a complete blank at this moment. Holy necromancer? No wonder Electrolux called him holy necromancer and not necromancer. The word holy was actually the word holy, representing the divinity of light. It turned out that necromancers could also be of the light attribute. How was this possible? Could it be that necromancers weren't supposed to deal with corpses and death, evil existences that walked in the shadows? It could be said that Electrolux's last sentence shocked Long Houchen more than anything before. This was a complete subversion of his understanding. The grayish-white light reappeared, but this time it was only a small ball. It quietly appeared in front of Long Houchen, floating there. It was a necklace. The necklace itself was made of white transparent gems the size of soybeans. The gems emitted a faint white fluorescence, and the gentle aura of light gave people a kind of warmth that came from the heart. The space that was originally filled with the aura of death was almost completely filled with light because of its appearance. The dense and somewhat viscous light elements almost instantly made Long Houchen use the saint's spiritual stove to replenish all of the spiritual power he had previously consumed. There was a small pendant on the necklace, about the size of a fingernail. It was also white and had the appearance of a small skull. In the place where its eyes should be, there was a pulsating golden flame. The viscous light elements were spreading out with it as the center. My dear disciple, this is my keepsake. Fortunately, you are not one of those dirty dark necromancers. Otherwise, I would have no choice but to give up on you. This necklace has been with me for 896 years, until the moment I fell into a deep slumber. Oh, you must remember not to let anyone from the glorious church see it, because it was made from the skull of the first glorious church's pontiff. Hee. Now that I think about those swindlers' faces after knowing that the holy tomb of the first pope was dug up by me, I feel incomparably excited. The name of this necklace is Eternal Melody. It is my keepsake, and also the key to opening the eternal sleep. If you have companions that you can absolutely trust in the future, you can bring them here to train. Of course, the prerequisite is that there can't be the dirtiest and most detestable darkness-type possessor among them. You brought them here, and if anyone harbors ill intentions towards you, the eternal slumber will make them sleep forever. From now on, you are my successor, the new master of the eternal slumber. Long Houchen did not have the ability to refuse. As soon as he finished speaking, the extremely warm light elements poured into his body like liquid. The Eternal Melody necklace quietly appeared around his neck, the transparent crystal head of the necklace hanging right on his chest. Immediately, Long Houchen felt his entire body warm up, as if he was soaking in warm water. His entire body immediately turned bright golden. It was as if he had entered the body of light state. Rich light elements flooded every corner of his body, constantly nourishing it. Blue rain, hibiscus of light, Saint's spiritual stove, and even the light elemental sprite Yating were all happily moaning in his chest. His liquid internal spiritual power was growing at a speed that was almost visible to the naked eye. It increased by at least 500 points before the growth rate slowed down. That skull pendant brimming with divine aura was also tightly attached to the center of Long Houchen's chest. Move on, child. From now on, everything here is yours. Even if there are no tests, you can still leave this place at any time. I look forward to seeing you in front of me as soon as possible. After saying this last sentence, the eternal slumber calamity Electrolux's voice completely faded. Although the surroundings were still covered in a grayish-white aura of death, Long Houchen, who was wearing the eternal melody, was like a sun here. His body unceasingly emitted dense golden rays of light. What was even more strange was that this light and the aura of death in this place were incomparably harmonious. There was not the slightest bit of conflict. The tower door behind Long Houchen quietly opened. This meant that he did not need to pass any tests and could leave this place at any time. At this moment, he stood there motionless. This was because a large amount of information was rapidly flowing into his mind, becoming a part of his memory. And the source of this information was the eternal melody. This information included the most basic control of the eternal slumber. A lot of this information was still sealed by the eternal melody necklace. But even more was the eternal slumber calamity Electrolux's understanding and training method of necromancy magic. This part of the information was really too much. More importantly, no matter how much Long Houchen did not want to become a necromancer, this information was still deeply imprinted in the depths of his soul. He could never forget it. Haoyue crouched behind Long Houchen and looked at him quietly. His 3 heads and 6 eyes emitted a gentle glow. Occasionally, he would glance towards the depths of the hall on the first floor. His pupils would reveal a look of reminiscence, but there was also a hint of confusion in his reminiscence. Standing there, Long Houchen gradually woke up after a full hour. The huge amount of information that flowed into his mind had already been imprinted in the depths of his memory. At this moment, Long Houchen's expression was not good. Even if the eternal slumber calamity Electrolux was a necromancer of the light attribute, he was still a necromancer. He was one of the main culprits that caused the catastrophe of the human race 10,000 years ago. How would Long Houchen be willing to become his successor? Even more so, he would not be willing to learn any necromancy magic. Turning around abruptly, Long Houchen looked at Haoyue with a burning gaze. Haoyue, you already knew what this place was for, didn't you? Long Houchen was really a little angry. If Haoyue had told him everything that happened here beforehand, he would not have chosen to enter at all. Even though the eternal melody had given him a great boost in strength, he was not willing to accept all of this. After wearing the eternal melody, he could not take it off at all. Woo-woo. Haoyue's 3 heads and 6 eyes were filled with innocence. He blinked his eyes and transmitted the information to Long Houchen one by one. Long Houchen's expression gradually changed from anger to astonishment when he felt the information it transmitted. Great prophecy spell? Your innate skill? Long Houchen's face was filled with disbelief as he stared at Haoyue. Haoyue actually told him that he possessed the ability of the Great Prophecy spell. To a certain extent, he could predict certain things that would happen in the future. Entering this castle came from his prophecy. However, he could not feel it clearly. He could only feel that this place would bring opportunities to Long Houchen without any danger. That was why he insisted on letting Long Houchen enter this place. With a bitter smile, Long Houchen walked in front of Haoyue and hugged Light's big head. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have doubted you. It's just that the impact of everything that happened just now was too great. I actually became the chosen successor of a necromancer. This is really... Light, Fire and Green snuggled up to him and gently stroked his body. Haoyue, what do you think I should do? Let's just leave and pretend that this never happened, alright? Anyway, after I leave, this Tower of Eternity will also enter another parallel plane. Haoyue's 3 heads nodded and shook. Long Haochen asked doubtfully, "You're saying that this is also an opportunity? It's not necessary to learn necromancy. It's also good to gain experience here?" Haoyue nodded. Long Haochen frowned and fell into deep thought. It could be said that he was struggling internally. The Tower of Eternity had a great impact on him. Especially the necromancy was imprinted in his memory. No matter how unwilling he was, he could not get rid of these memories. The melody of eternity would always be around his neck, benefiting him. Long Haochen was never a greedy person. On the contrary, if others treated him well, he would repay them tenfold. No matter how unwilling he was, the truth was that he had indeed benefited from the eternal slumber Electrolux, and it was a benefit that he could not get rid of. This was what made him most uncomfortable. After a while, Long Haochen slowly raised his head and sighed. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps you're right, but I can't make the decision. Whether I want to use this place to gain experience depends on my companion's opinions. However, we should try to find out what the test here is. At least we have to ensure that if my companions really come here with me, they can leave safely." A layer of hazy golden light shot out from his chest under Long Haochen's guidance and landed on Haoyue's body. It immediately added a layer of golden luster to his best companion's body. Haoyue looked like even his scales had turned golden. This was the effect of the melody of eternity. According to the memory it brought to Long Haochen, if he wanted to gain experience here and not become an enemy of the Tower of Eternity, he had to be contaminated by the aura of the melody of eternity. Turning around, Long Haochen put away the Holy Spirit shield in his left hand and summoned blue rain and hibiscus of light from within his body. The moment blue rain and hibiscus of light appeared, Long Haochen was stunned. This was because he suddenly realized that his strongest attack weapon had undergone some strange changes. Its body was still the same as before, but the light emitted from it had changed. Holding blue rain and hibiscus of light in his palm, it immediately gave Long Haochen a feeling of moisture all over his body. His body was moisturized and filled with a sense of comfort. The body of the sword emitted a layer of golden luster. To be precise, it should be a golden mist. It was somewhat ethereal, but filled with the aura of light and water. This golden mist permeated a radius of 1 foot around the blade. It was exceptionally strange. The moment Long Haochen poured his spiritual power into it, the golden mist instantly condensed and formed a golden sword light that was 3 feet long in front of the blade. Evolved? Long Haochen still clearly remembered that the Temple Master of the Knights Templars, the leader of the Holy Alliance, Yang Haohan, had once said that the greatest characteristic of blue rain and hibiscus of light was that they could evolve. Could it be that in these few short months, under the nourishment of the saint's spiritual stove, it had already completed an evolution? Looking at the light elemental fluctuations emitted by blue rain and hibiscus of light, Long Haochen could be completely sure that this strange longsword was at least a glory-level weapon. It might even be higher. Compared to the Holy Spirit's sword in his right hand that was only emitting a faint white light, Long Haochen almost subconsciously switched the heavy swords in his hands, holding blue rain and hibiscus of light in his right hand. This action also meant that he had chosen to give up the use of the Holy Spirit set. From now on, blue rain and hibiscus of light would become his main weapons. At most, he would only use the Holy Spirit's sword to coordinate with them. The reason for this choice was obviously because the effects of blue rain and hibiscus of light had already surpassed the Holy Spirit set as a whole. The eternal melody brought many memories to Long Haochen, but as for how to train in the Tower of Eternity, there was only one instruction: forward. Not riding on Haoyue, Long Haochen walked in front with the heavy sword in his hands. Every step he took was not fast, his whole body and mind feeling the danger that could appear at any time. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Just when he took the 4th step forward from the position where he obtained the eternal melody, Long Houchen's footsteps suddenly stopped. Holding the heavy sword in his hands, he vigilantly looked ahead. 2 white lights, without warning, shone 5 meters in front of him. Immediately 2 huge silhouettes emerged from the ground. They were 2 huge skeletons, surrounded by white light, filled with the aura of death and light at the same time. The 2 human-shaped skeletons were about 2.5 meters tall, their bones were white, and there were 3 golden halos under their feet. They were actually the Faith Halo, Power Halo, and Courage Halo that Long Houchen was most familiar with. The bone shield in his left hand, the bone blade in his right, and the position of his eyes was burning with the same golden flame as the eternal melody. However, this flame was not as pure as the eternal melody. Boom, boom, boom. Taking heavy steps, the 2 huge skeletons directly pounced on Long Houchen. A sharp and oppressive aura erupted in an instant. They were actually using a charging skill similar to that of humans. Long Houchen used the 9 dragon steps and quickly leaped to the left. In this way, at least he would not have to face the attacks of the skeletons from 2 directions at the same time. Holding the Holy Spirit sword in his left hand horizontally, he used the divine defense to block. Clang! Amidst the intense roar, Long Houchen, who was in the state of the divine defense, was actually pushed back more than 3 steps before he could barely stand. So strong. Although Long Houchen did not know what level his internal spiritual energy had reached, he could roughly judge that after obtaining the eternal melody, his internal spiritual energy had already increased to more than 3,500. In this kind of situation, he was still pushed back by this skeleton. This skeleton's strength was at least equivalent to 7 or 8,000 internal spiritual energy. This was the first test given to him by the Tower of Eternity. The other skeleton didn't pincer attack Long Houchen. Instead, it directly pounced towards Haoyue. In a moment it was about to reach Haoyue. A white light flashed, and the skeleton was forcibly attracted. Just when it was 1 meter away from Haoyue, it turned around and pounced on Long Houchen. It was the Saint Spiritual Stove. From beginning to end, Haoyue acted as if he did not see it. All 3 heads were chanting their own incantations. This was the tacit understanding and trust between it and Long Houchen. Clang! Another collision sound rang out. This time, it was Long Houchen who launched an attack. The Saint's spiritual sword blocked the opponent's blade. His blue rain and hibiscus of light also slashed at the skeleton with the help of the light's vengeance. The skeleton held the bone shield in its left hand horizontally, blocking in front of the blue rain and hibiscus of light, making a strong collision sound. The evolved blue rain and hibiscus of light were indeed extraordinary. The golden light streaked across, leaving an inch-deep mark on the bone shield. Charging forward, Long Houchen suddenly accelerated to the side, dodging the skeleton's attack attracted by the Saint's spiritual stove. His figure turned around, and a light-severing sword slashed out horizontally. Immediately, the blue rain and hibiscus of light blazed with golden light. The swift and fierce sword chi accompanied the light-severing sword simultaneously erupted. However, this clearly could not scare the 2 skeletons. They both held their shields horizontally in front of their bodies. Unexpectedly, each of them also released a holy light infusion shield skill. They welcomed the light-severing sword and rushed towards Long Houchen. At this time, Haoyue's magic was finally completed. An enlarged version of the wind blade, fireball, and light-severing sword simultaneously bombarded the skeleton's right knee joint. Moreover, the skeleton he chose was precisely the one attracted by Long Houchen's Saint Spiritual Stove. These 2 light-attributed skeletons were more difficult to deal with than Long Houchen had imagined. The skeleton that had been targeted by Haoyue's magic unexpectedly had an extremely strong perception. It suddenly crouched down, and then used its bone shield to block in front of its body. After 3 rumbling sounds, Long Houchen was shocked to see that the skeleton's body unexpectedly released a golden light. It was actually the light's vengeance. In other words, it relied on the divine defense to block Haoyue's attack. The other skeleton also caught up with Long Haochen in its extreme speed. The pure white bone blade glittered with a divine radiance. It was actually a holy sword. It directly chopped down towards Long Haochen's head. Facing this degree of spiritual power suppression, Long Haochen did not dare to use the battle-killing revolving sword. This was because this skeleton could completely rely on its spiritual power to shake him away. Buzz, a large canopy of light was suddenly released from the blue rain and hibiscus of light. Long Haochen moved horizontally to block. It was still the divine defense block. Boom! Facing this skeleton's attack, Long Haochen unexpectedly forcibly blocked it. Moreover, this time, he unexpectedly did not retreat in the slightest. Moreover, on the bone blade in the skeleton's hand, there was impressively a gap of about an inch. The bone blade wasn't shaken away, but instead slid to the side along the blue rain and hibiscus of light. It fiercely bombarded the ground. It was unknown what kind of material the ground was made of. Facing such a powerful skeleton's holy sword, it unexpectedly only burst out sparks, without the slightest sign of damage. A resonant dragon cry burst out from Long Haochen's body. With the blue rain, hibiscus of light, and the Holy Spirit sword as the lead, the Punishment Knight's rank 5 attack skill, Rising Dragon Strike, erupted. There was even a strange, buzzing sound amidst the dragon's roar. At this moment, the skeleton was in a disadvantageous position. The bone blade slashed on the ground and was affected by the impact of the impact. Long Haochen's attack could be said to be launched at the perfect time. In a hurry, the skeleton could only use the bone shield in its hand to block Long Haochen's attack. Amid the ear-piercing roar, this time, the skeleton was actually ruthlessly knocked away by Long Haochen. It rolled on the ground, and when it stood up again, the bone shield in its hand had already been broken by more than half. For Long Haochen, the most important thing about this attack was that it strengthened his confidence. There was only one reason why he could block the opponent's powerful attack and destroy the bone shield: Ripple of Light. When Divine Block was added to the elemental shock wave of Ripple of Light, not only did the defense greatly increase, but it also had the effect of reducing the force. Therefore, the skeleton's holy sword was unable to fully affect the blue rain and hibiscus of light. Even Long Haochen himself did not expect that the combination of blue rain, hibiscus of light, and ripple of light would actually become so sharp. Although this skeleton's combat strength was strong, it was clearly not good at defense. It was just like when he did not have suitable equipment. The other skeleton did not appear in front of Long Haochen to block the subsequent attacks from Long Haochen for its companion, because after the 3 spells were blocked, Long Haochen also launched a series of attacks. Its huge body leaped forward, and 3 not very strong but extremely practical spells burst out from its body at the same time. The fire element's resistant ring of fire, the light element's ripple of light, and the wind element's wild wind dance. These 3 spells only had one function, and that was to impact. Even if the skeleton had Divine Block, the knight's ultimate weapon, under the effect of the 3 impact spells, it was still knocked a few steps to the side. And just these few steps gave Long Haochen enough time. The intense sun's fire rose from blue rain and hibiscus of light almost instantly. The high-frequency oscillation of ripple of light made the sun's fire exude a hazy sense of beauty. Assault. Glorious Sun Slash. There was no doubt that the power of the glorious Sun Slash was not comparable to the Holy Sword, but it was superior in that it did not require the accumulation of incantations like the Holy Sword. With Long Haochen's current cultivation base, he could completely cast this skill instantaneously. The combination of skills was very mysterious. For example, the glorious Sun Slash with the sun's fire. Not every Punishment Knight had this kind of knowledge, but Long Haochen was the son of the Judgment and Judgment Knight of the Seal, Long Xingwu. 2 huge balls of blazing sun shone, and Long Haochen's 2 swords even disappeared at this moment. The dim light of the sun's fire completely condensed on the two balls of blazing sun, and the blazing aura of light instantly skyrocketed. At this time, the gap brought about by the equipment could be seen. Both were using the sun's fire and the glorious sun slash, but the blazing sun formed by the Holy Spirit's sword was more than half the size of the blazing sun formed by blue rain and hibiscus of light. Roar! The skeleton did not resign itself to death. With an angry roar, the golden flames in its eyes suddenly intensified, causing a layer of pale golden flames to rise from its body. It actually gave up the bone shield in its left hand, held the sword with both hands, and made a slashing motion. In an instant, the air around the skeleton's body seemed to quickly gather towards it, even creating a certain pulling force on Long Houchen. The terrifying sword slashed the condensed air apart, making a shrill whistle. The bone sword in its hand had completely turned bright gold, and the power of this attack gave Long Houchen a feeling that it was almost impossible to block. This attack gave Long Houchen the feeling that it was splitting the heavens and the earth. The most terrifying thing was not its attack power, but the pressure it brought, forcing Long Houchen to have no choice but to face it head-on. The two balls of blazing sun crossed in the air, and spiritual power was fully released. The glorious sun slash turned into a cross slash, and at the same time, it met the bone sword. The roar was accompanied by a burst of golden light like fireworks, and in an instant, it illuminated the surrounding area of hundreds of square meters. Long Houchen's entire body flew backwards, and blue rain and hibiscus of light in his hands buzzed like a dragon's roar. At the same time, his body also shone with a golden light. The life-sharing effect of the soul chain was activated, and his companions who were far away on the mountainside shared the damage for him. The power of the skeleton's attack was too terrifying. It must be known that Long Houchen's attack included 4 skills: Ripple of Light, Glorious Sun Slash, Fire of the Sun, and Cross Slash. His spiritual power was also fully released, and there was also the effect of Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. With such a powerful attack, he was actually forcibly sent flying. This was when he had the upper hand, and the skeleton's slash did not display its full power. Long Houchen was completely sure that if he had not first used Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light to meet the skeleton's attack, and the skeleton's bone sword was not considered a weapon at all, he was afraid that this attack would have cut him in half. If it had been the Holy Spirit's sword in front of him, it would definitely have broken. The web between his thumb and forefinger had been torn, his arms were sore, and his chest was stuffy. This skeleton was much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. It seemed that not only had its spiritual power reached rank 6, but even its skills were the same. Apart from not being able to fly, this skeleton was simply like a rank 6 Radiance Knight. However, although the skeleton had sent Long Houchen flying with 1 slash, it did not feel good either. The bone sword, which was not very solid, had already been broken into pieces. Long Houchen's Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light had left a deep mark on its chest, and the blazing fire of the sun was burning its body, which could be considered as a serious injury to the skeleton. This was just one skeleton. What about the other one? Long Houchen barely stood up and adjusted the spiritual power in his body. His gaze swept to Haoyue's side. When he looked, his eyes suddenly became a little dull. With a bang, the skeleton was actually swept across the waist by Haoyue's big tail. Its body was thrown out and collided with the skeleton that was burned by the fire of the sun. Both skeletons rolled on the ground at the same time. Haoyue's melee ability was actually this strong? This was the first time that Long Houchen had seen Haoyue launch an attack with his body. Immediately after, he saw a series of magic bombardment. Light, fire, and wind, 3 low-grade magic baptized the 2 skeletons like a storm. Although it was not enough to destroy them, the power was enough to suppress them and make them temporarily unable to move. Long Houchen took a deep breath and thought to himself, Haoyue's cultivation is probably at least at the peak of rank 6, and it's rank 3. Without considering equipment, I'm afraid that I may not be Haoyue's opponent in terms of strength. Looking at its appearance, its external spiritual power should be quite strong, at least far from what I can compare with. At this moment, Long Haochen felt a warmth in his chest rapidly spreading throughout his body. The feeling of irritation caused by the skeleton's slash immediately disappeared. As the warmth flowed through his limbs and bones, the soreness in his arms lessened by a lot. Even the wound between his thumb and forefinger closed and stopped bleeding. Without a doubt, the eternal melody was what gave Long Haochen such a strong healing ability. Without any hesitation, the blue rain and hibiscus of light in Long Haochen's hands flashed again. He turned his body halfway, and a red light suddenly shone on the skeleton that he had heavily injured before. Immediately after, accompanied by a light dragon's roar, the blue rain and hibiscus of light had already turned into a blue and gold cone of light that shot out explosively. Rain of light hibiscus sting. At the same time that he released this attack, Long Haochen carefully observed the effect and the consumption of his spiritual power. He was pleasantly surprised to find that following the evolution of blue rain and hibiscus of light, his spiritual power consumption for the rain of light hibiscus sting this time had decreased by a lot. Although it still consumed 2,000 spiritual power, with his current spiritual power cultivation, he would not lose the ability to fight after releasing this attack. Not only did the rain of light hibiscus sting's power not decrease because of the reduction in spiritual power consumption, but it was even more tyrannical. Originally, the final attack of this attack was the combination of two rays of light that burst out with a powerful penetrating force. But this time it was different. Flying in the air, the blue light gradually disappeared and completely merged with the golden light. The moment the golden light hit its target, the skeleton's entire body turned into an icy blue color. It actually had a freezing effect. Boom! The skeleton that was trying hard to extinguish the sun's fire was instantly shattered into pieces. The moment the rain of light hibiscus sting exploded, the pale blue halo that spread out even caused its partner to slow down for a moment. It was continuously bombarded by several spells from Haoyue and rolled on the ground for a few rounds. Finally killed one. Long Haochen finally let out a sigh of relief. But at this time, a strange scene appeared. A speck of white light appeared in front of Long Haochen like lightning. Long Haochen subconsciously used the Holy Spirit sword to block it, but he blocked empty air. That speck of white light didn't seem to receive even the slightest bit of force. In the next moment, it had already merged with Long Haochen's body. Suddenly, a warm aura appeared in his chest. Long Haochen hurriedly looked inside his body. He was surprised to find that in front of the saint's spiritual furnace, there was a drop of white liquid floating. What was even more surprising was the purity of this drop of liquid. It didn't have any attribute and was highly concentrated. Long Haochen was completely sure that the concentration of this drop of white liquid energy was equivalent to 10 drops of his liquid spiritual power. Only one of the two skeletons remained. The following battle was without any suspense. Long Haochen learned from the previous lesson and cooperated with Haoyue. Using the saint's spiritual furnace's traction ability, they didn't let that skeleton have the opportunity to lock onto them and launch its powerful chopping skill. Finally, taking advantage of its inferior defensive power and low intelligence, they got rid of it. However, after getting rid of these two skeletons, Long Haochen only felt physically and mentally exhausted. He was surprised to find that his spiritual power had unexpectedly been consumed by more than 80%. Even Haoyue's magical power had been consumed by a lot. The moment the second skeleton was killed, the same drop of white liquid flowed into his body, combining with the previous drop. He didn't try to move forward again. With Long Haochen's current state, he simply didn't have the slightest chance of winning against these two skeletons. The significance of killing these two skeletons was to give it a try. Watching the white bone fragments on the ground gradually disappear, Long Haochen sat cross-legged on the ground thoughtfully. He urged the liquid spiritual power in his body to try to assimilate the 2 drops of white liquid. The result made him excited. The 2 drops of extremely pure non-attribute energy didn't have the slightest bit of resistance. With just a little bit of contact with his own spiritual power, they became a part of his body's spiritual power. Moreover, just as he had predicted, each drop of this liquid energy increased his spiritual power by as much as 10 points. However, Long Houchen quickly became depressed because his current spiritual power wasn't sufficient. The 2 drops of liquid energy were only to help him recover his spiritual power and nothing more. They didn't really increase his total spiritual power. Long Houchen immediately realized where the problem was. What a loss! He should have waited until he had completely recovered his spiritual power before absorbing them. Defeating a skeleton could increase his spiritual power by 10 points. This was much faster than training. Although the 2 skeletons were quite tyrannical, the benefits that they brought to him were also very obvious. With the existence of the eternal melody, it only took less than half an hour for Long Houchen to fully recover his spiritual power in this tower of eternity that was filled with the smell of death. Standing up again, Long Houchen didn't continue to move forward. He had to leave this place. This experience in the Tower of Eternity had a great impact on him. He was full of curiosity about the sleeping disaster Electrolux. But he was very clear that if he wanted to find out the true situation of the disaster 10,000 years ago, he was afraid that he would only be able to reach the 7th floor. And this was obviously not something that could be done in a day or 2. With the prohibition left by the divine law of necromancy, it was impossible for him to climb to the top of this tower without a 9th stage cultivation base. The original resistance in Long Houchen's heart had faded a lot with the death of the 2 skeletons. I don't want the inheritance of Electrolux, but it doesn't affect me to use this place as a training ground. There was no doubt that there were still countless mysterious and novel things waiting for him to discover in the Tower of Eternity. As for whether or not to share this place with his companions, he still had to go back and think about it clearly. At least he had to discuss it with Kair first. After all, the word necromancer was a huge shock to humans. After thinking about this, Long Houchen suddenly felt a lot more cheerful. It was time to go back. It was at least more than 10 hours since he entered the cave. Haoyue followed him here again. Thinking of this, Long Houchen called out to Haoyue, turned around and walked out of the tower. At this moment, Haoyue suddenly made a whining sound and blocked Long Houchen's way. Long Houchen looked at it doubtfully. What's wrong? Little Light stuck its head in front of Long Houchen and spat out a pale golden bead. Long Houchen subconsciously raised his hand to catch it. The moment the golden bead fell into his hand, a golden light burst out and directly drilled into the space between Long Houchen's eyebrows. A short memory mark appeared in Long Houchen's mind. Azura / condense spiritual energy to gather / heaven and earth in Lang Lang. This was actually the memory of a skill. Moreover, it was a 6th-stage skill. Wasn't it the terrifying fatal blow from the skeleton that almost cut Long Houchen in half?